Get ready. You and I are about to see what happens when a commander tries to break her best soldier. She claimed I only needed one eye and literally ripped out my right one with her bare hands. The cadets were frozen in terror, but I just stared her down, calm as ever. I knew this empire wouldn't throw away a weapon as perfect as me. To understand this madness, we have to look back. It all started long ago when Earth finally met its end. Resource wars bled us dry before an unknown alien race wiped us out. Survivors drifted through the dark until we found Novice. It was a mirror of our old home, but peace? That was just a lie we told ourselves. Three powers tore the world apart: the Battle Federation, full of aliens, the Holy Alliance of the Crates, fanatics with mental powers, and then there's us, the Acreia Empire. We are steel, the Acreia Empire. I'm Luca, and I was raised to believe in our absolute dominance. I was born in the slums, a nobody in a system where nobles decide who lives. I refused to stay at the bottom. I turned my body into a pure weapon, pushing through every bit of agony for one goal: joining the Imperial Guard and proving myself to the Emperor. I was relentless. Everything was for the glory of Acreia. During my final trial, I went feral. I copied high-level noble moves, deflected bullets with my blade, and absolutely shredded everyone in my path within seconds. Now watch closely. This brutal display is what led to that insane eye test I just mentioned. My reward for surviving? A high-tech cybernetic eye. That is the price you pay for power. During my recovery, a noble prodigy named L.A. approached me. Surprisingly, he didn't look down on me like the other highborns did. He offered top-tier painkillers and admitted the Empire was trash for picking bloodlines over actual talent. He actually praised my skills. A noble wanting to be friends? I just told him coldly that I'd eventually surpass him. But honestly, we formed a real bond. 2 years passed. With my new eye making every shot lethal, we headed to our first mission. The commander gave us one order: wipe out an illegal outpost, 0 prisoners. But trust me, this is where our golden image of the Empire shattered. There was no military base, just a village. Amidst the fire and the screams, I finally found a target to kill. A little girl, cornered and sobbing for her mother. My sword suddenly felt 1,000 pounds heavy. For once, the Empire's brainwashing failed me. I actually hesitated. I faked an attack and told her to play dead, breaking our most sacred law. Before I could process that, hell erupted. L.A., the noble who believed in me, had half his body vaporized by an energy blast. Gerita, a Crate Force user, was fighting like a demon to defend his home. I dodged his magic, feeling the air warp around me, pushing my heart to the limit. Finally, I lunged forward and buried my sword in his chest. With his dying breath, Gerita blasted my head with magic, shattering my helmet completely. He was about to crush my skull, but then he stopped. He saw the face of a child. In that absolute bloodbath, my enemy showed me mercy because I looked young. I did not give him that same luxury. I used his hesitation to drive my blade deeper into his heart, ending the fight. But as his blood stained my hands, all that loyalty I felt for the Empire just vanished. I survived, but looking at a man who showed me mercy while his village burned, I finally realized just how twisted this Empire really was. He just stood there among the ruins, hearing nothing but the screams of the dying. Back at the Imperial Hospital, Luca floated in a tank while L.A. asked him how it felt to almost meet the Reaper. Luca told him to ask himself, since L.A. was the one who actually almost died out there. L.A. was just happy about his new upgrades. He was stoked. Luca got titanium bones and new skin. In a few years, he would be more machine than man. L.A. mentioned that the higher-ups probably knew about the Force user. It was all just a test. The seniors did not help because they wanted to see if the rookies could survive the meat grinder. Still, L.A. found it weird that they both survived that Force power. It did not feel like luck at all. You and I just saw a change. Luca remembered what Gerita had said. It was a fatal mistake for the enemy to let him live, since he was a loyal soldier of the Empire. To him, that pathetic mercy was exactly why those savages were being wiped out by the Imperial forces. Suddenly, L.A. turns and catches Luca off guard by asking why he turned a blind eye to that child. Stick with me, because this answer will change everything for both of them. Hearing that, Luca turns his face toward the opposite side. He snaps back, telling L.A. he talked too much, and asking if he grew a brand new tongue. With a face full of guilt, he claims it was just a mistake. An instructor announces the trainees have finished 2 years of training. Now, they must serve as the perfect models for the younger recruits joining the ranks. This is especially true for Luca and L.A., the absolute number 1 and 2 soldiers in the entire troop. The man in glasses notes they could become legendary centurions, bringing massive amounts of glory to the Empire in the future. He explains the Guard's internal structure. Every 1,000 soldiers are split into 10 centuries, each led by a single powerful chief centurion. Luca figures that once the cadets undergo complete body mechanization, they will likely be assigned to the legendary 10th century unit. Even if it is the lowest rank, Luca knows securing a spot there will be highly beneficial for him. In the training arena, LA prepares to launch a heavy direct punch with his newly mechanized metal arm, but Luca is faster, blocking the massive blow with a solid guard. Now watch this. As they trade intense blows, Luca realizes the noble has actually grown much stronger since getting that new metal arm of his. But then, Luca sweeps his leg with a quick kick, sending LA crashing toward the ground. Seizing the opening, Luca prepares to deliver a final finishing blow to his face. He stops just inches away and declares that this round marks 124 fights and 124 victories. After the session, they sit under the stars. LA admits he really thought he would win this time. Luca tells him new parts aren't everything. The blonde then notes Luca has been acting stiffer ever since that talk about becoming a centurion. Luca admits it. He just wishes he had more real experience as a guardian. LA asks him to relax, but Luca knows he has no home to go back to. That is why he has to keep pushing. LA has talent, but he lacks the real motivation to truly succeed. Why join the guard? LA smiles at the sky and finally confesses his secret truth. He wanted to be an archaeologist studying ancient magic. Luca asks why he did not just do that then. LA explains the subject is banned by the Empire. Plus, his noble family would never accept a path like that. Luca calls him spoiled. The poor do not even know if they will find a meal to eat tomorrow. You and I saw that coming. But LA was really just trying to share a secret with his only true friend. Luca warns him. Talking like that sounds like treason. If someone reported him, he would be in serious trouble with the Empire. You have my secret too, Luca says. I only hesitated because my opponent was not a true soldier. He stares LA down with cold eyes. He declares his total loyalty to the Empire and its strength. Its enemies are his enemies, and he warns LA that he is no exception to that rule. LA just smiles at those words. As he climbs down the wall, he calls Luca a total liar. If his devotion were truly fanatical, he would have already tried to kill LA for those words. Don't be so hard on yourself, LA says as he walks away. Luca just calls him an idiot, muttering that he's going to get himself screwed. A year later, they find themselves on a reconnaissance mission in a neutral zone. Le places his hand on an ancient wall. He is thrilled. The wall is millions of years old and glowing with powerful ancient energy. Look at this. Civilizations explored the stars before humans even existed. Is this not the coolest thing you have ever seen? Luca worries. Despite all the warnings, LA is still crossing the line into forbidden territory. He tells him to be more careful. If an enemy appears, they will have to fight for their lives. But LA is too excited to listen, joking that the guard will save them. Luca feels very uneasy. Suddenly, a voice says the past helps us see the future. Studying history actually makes perfect sense for someone like him. It is Claude Raon, another noble cadet with white hair and striking red eyes joining the group conversation. Trust me, you and I are going to want to see where this noble's interest leads. Alright, you and I are dropping right into a tense standoff where every single second counts. Taking a combat stance, Luca warns that anyone coming closer is a threat, but Claude just tries to introduce his sister. Claude then asks Luca to actually give the idea some serious thought. LA laughs about Luca's sudden popularity, only to get told to shut up as a sudden tremor shakes the entire ground. Moving fast, the leader orders a combat formation, putting himself and Claude up front while LA's team hangs back for support. Luca spots a strange, bright light flickering through the trees and tries to figure out exactly what it is. There it is, a shadowy figure standing perfectly still, with a glowing cube hovering over its head, and Luca recognizes the threat instantly. It is a quarry paladin draped in elegant silver armor, and sensing their presence, it slowly turns its gaze toward them. Both trainees, Luca and Claude, start to panic once they realize their hiding spot is totally blown. Raising one arm, the paladin summons a spear crackling with raw energy and points it straight at the soldiers. Seeing that terrifying power, Luca screams for Claude to run, but the night is a blur, launching the attack with insane speed. Luca can only watch in absolute horror as Claude takes the full force of the enemy strike head-on. Claude is sent flying as a crimson spray erupts, and Luca screams his friend's name in pure desperation. The paladin just stands there motionless while the spear he threw remains embedded in the wall of an ancient stone pillar. With just a simple flick of his hand, the knight wraps the spear in energy and calls it right back into his grip. Paralyzed with fear, Luca can't look away from Claude's broken, trembling body on the ground. A wave of pure horror hits him as he remembers their talk, now seeing how little is actually left of his companion. That spear moves so fast that literally half of Claude's body has been completely wiped away. Luca desperately tries to kickstart his mechanical eye, but the hardware just won't respond to his commands. He stares at the paladin's outstretched hand, praying for his eye to calculate the trajectory of the next incoming spear. Suddenly, a hail of gunfire rains down on the knight, who quickly summons a glowing shield to defend himself. It is Eli and his team rushing toward the scene, yelling for Luca to snap out of it and regroup. Pay attention here, because the blonde leader knows they have to fight and buy time before every last one of them is killed. Luca knew she was right. There is no escaping this, so Luca draws his red sword, knowing there is only one way out of this nightmare. He thinks of the Imperial Guard's senior officers, praying he can just hold out until those reinforcements finally show up. Luca and the Paladin lock eyes for a final showdown as a desperate race against the clock begins. The knight hurls the spear again, and though Luca dodges, it grazes him and shears off half of his helmet. Using his power, the Paladin makes the spear loop through the air, curving it right back toward Luca's blind spot. Seeing death approaching from behind, Luca realizes he doesn't have nearly enough time to jump out of the way. A memory of near death flashes by, along with Commander Castoria's cold voice saying the Imperial Guard has no room for the weak. Pushed to his limit, Luca shifts his stance and swings his blade to collide directly with the incoming spear. He knows he has to strike before the Paladin can reset, and with a heavy impact, the energy around the spear shatters. A massive explosion goes off, kicking up dust as Illa screams Luca's name in pure worry. A broken piece of Luca's sword flies through the air, spinning wildly before slamming deep into the dirt. You and I can see he survived, but Luca is disarmed and his hand is mangled from the impact. Facing the silent Paladin, Luca readies himself for the end as the knight finally reaches for the hilt of his own sword. A blue aura explodes from his body as he unleashes a lethal triangle of slashes that hurtles toward the remaining trainees with terrifying force. Luca barely managed to dodge the main hit, but his right arm still gets sliced deep. That blow continues past him, striking the other soldiers behind Luca and cutting them all down. Realizing he wasn't even the target, the cadet looks back and screams for his friends who just got struck. Taking advantage of the distraction, the Paladin charges forward, and a terrified Luca sees absolutely no way to survive this. With 0 options left, he lets out a desperate shout and leaps toward the knight, who is already prepared to strike. Deep in the forest, someone else is closing in fast, using propulsion to boost their speed to impossible levels. The red-cloaked guard heads deeper into the forest. As he draws closer, he sees a disarmed Luca missing an arm with the Paladin closing in. Just as they are about to collide, the Paladin's head is grabbed right in front of him. And trust me, we're about to see who just saved him. Alright, you and I are about to see what happens when the Imperial Guard finally arrives to save the day, slamming that Paladin into the dirt with a bone-crushing grip. Firing up the thrusters in his leg, the guard grinds the Paladin's head deep into the jagged ground. With one hand still dragging him, he draws his pistol and pumps round after round into the knight's back, never letting up on the brutal friction against the floor. Spotting the massive ancestral pillar, the guard hurls the Paladin into it with explosive force. From a safe distance, Luca watches the pillar shake from the massive impact, gasping for air while struggling to believe he's actually still alive. Through the thick dust and rising smoke, the guard begins his approach. As the figure emerges from the fog, Luca recognizes his senior. He shouts out in pure joy, finally feeling safe now that the Imperial Guard is here. But pay attention here, because right behind the guard, the Paladin is already using his sword to stand back up. Turning around, the senior radiates a lethal red aura as he glares at the knight behind a shattered mask. Squarely facing his foe, the guard readies for round 2, while the knight leans on his blade, refusing to stay down. The senior levels his heavy axe at the knight. Watching from the sidelines, a breathless Luca realizes the scale of this fight. An Imperial Guard in his Legion armor versus a Holy Knight wielding the power of the Force. As they charge, Luca wonders who is truly superior. Their weapons collide in a blinding flash, sending a massive shockwave ripping through the air. They lock eyes, entering a raw and brutal contest of pure strength. Under a dark sky, the two trade blows while soaring through the air. In the heart of the forest, a massive explosion from their clash is visible for miles. In this relentless exchange of deadly strikes, neither warrior gives the other a single second to breathe. You and I both see it, the senior is moving so fast that Luca can't even track the path of his weapon. As the duel rages on, Luca desperately prays for the guard to come out on top. Landing a crushing blow, the guard uses his weapons boosters to amplify the impact, shattering the Paladin's blade into 1,000 shards. Seizing the opening, the senior grabs the knight's head again, firing up his mechanical arms thrusters to put lethal pressure on the knight's skull. But as the guard crushes the helmet, the Paladin channels the force into a hidden spear. The weapon, still stuck in the dirt behind Luca, suddenly glows with lethal energy once again. Seeing the trap, Luca stares at the spear with an expression of pure terror. Thinking back to Claude, Luca realizes the senior has no idea how fast that spear is, and won't be able to react. One arm gone and desperate, Luca knows that if the guard falls, it's game over for him too. Digging deep, Luca searches for a way to stop it. As the spear rockets toward the senior, Luca throws his leg in the way and it's torn clean off. He prays it'll miss its mark. Now, all he can do is wait for the outcome. With the Paladin's head still in his grip, the guard sees the spear graze right past his armor. With the spear missing its mark, the Paladin grabs the guard's axe and channels a massive surge of force into his hand. Sensing the knight's plan, the guard drops his weapon and curls his fist, preparing to deliver a final, crushing blow. As the paladin gathers his energy, the guard throws a punch with everything he's got, smashing directly into the knight's head. The impact slams the paladin into the earth, triggering a massive blast. In the wreckage, Luca lies gasping, now missing both his right arm and leg. Too shattered to even crawl forward, Luca can only wonder who actually walked away from that explosion. Sensing movement, he prays it's the guard. Eyes squeezed shut, Luca hears a voice nearby telling him he did a great job. The voice says that thanks to Luca's sacrifice, they finally managed to take the paladin down. He asks if Luca has any stomach wounds. Luca groans that he was hit while trying to dodge the knight's last slash. The guard offers to carry him back to base, but when Luca looks up, he's hit with pure, chilling horror. This was the Legion, a full-body mechanical rig, built to strip away every unnecessary part of the human form. It turns a soldier into the ultimate weapon, a dream for every trainee. But as the guard reaches out, Luca notices he has no head. Luca wonders if the guard is even alive. How can he be, without a brain? Is this a man or a machine? In a ghostly voice, the headless guard starts fumbling around, wondering if his head is really gone or just misplaced. Realizing his head is truly gone, the guard lets out a scream of pure, mechanical desperation. Then he collapses to his knees, completely lifeless. Watching this, Luca wonders if he's been training to become a monster like this all along. And trust me, you and I are left with the same chilling question: will Luca even survive until real help arrives? Stick with me, we're starting with Luca lying next to a dead guard, wondering if this was truly his final moment. Suddenly, someone approaches and asks if he is still in one piece. It is Lei, a fellow survivor of the Paladin onslaught. Looking for his friend, Luca immediately asks about the rest of the squad. Lei's answer is chilling, they are the only ones left. Sitting by the fallen guard, the blonde boy asks Luca just how bad his injuries are. Luca sighs, admitting his time is probably running out soon. Stuck on the ground, Luca catches Lei off guard by asking what his next move is going to be. He mentions the life he always dreamed of was finally within reach, but Lei just listens in heavy, cold silence. Staring at the horizon, Luca warns him that his dreams can't be found inside the Empire. Sweating through the pain, he tells Lei to head for Kate or Bato instead. Lei stays silent. Luca adds that reinforcements are coming, meaning they will be forced back to the Empire soon. Lei needs to move. Finally, the boy stands up, gasping for air. Luca watches as his friend begins limping toward the dark forest. Most citizens would kill for a family like Lei's. Thinking back to the nights they spent stargazing, Luca realizes he just doesn't get this guy at all. But whenever Lei talked about his dreams, his eyes would light up with incredible intensity. With a heavy heart, Luca hopes his friend finds freedom. Then, he finally closes his eyes. Now watch this, Lei comes back. Luca feels a cloth on his bleeding stump and asks what this idiot thinks he is doing. With a faint smile, Lei admits that Luca's dramatic attitude actually made him worry he would kick the bucket. He says he wouldn't be able to sleep if he just left his friend to die like that. Luca just sighs, calling him a fool, as the rescue ship finally descends from the clouds. Flash forward a bit, Luca is recovered and deep into a comic about a massive starship invasion. Lei sneaks up and asks if he is looking for parts, which nearly makes Luca jump out of his skin. Gesturing to the page, Lei suggests the F-24 model for its superior tech and speed. Luca just shuts the magazine and sets it on the seat. He tells his friend to quit lurking like a ghost, and Lei quickly offers a nervous apology. Back at the Empire and patched up, Luca finds himself being interrogated by several different military branches. They grill him about the bloodbath involving the 3 cadets and the guard. The brass calls it an encounter with a Karata paladin, but that is just a guess. Stick with me, Luca wasn't brought in just for a report. Lei mentions that a mysterious artifact was actually recovered from the scene. Luca flashes back to that weird floating cube near the paladin, convinced it started the whole mess. He asks who is actually handling the object now. Lei says a team of specialists was sent in. Then, his face goes completely serious. He explains that if the Alliance refuses to surrender the artifact, an all-out war is going to ignite. If the Empire clashes with the Karatas, Bellotta wins big without even breaking a sweat. Small skirmishes are already breaking out everywhere. But Luca cuts him off. He is totally done hearing about messy politics. He just wants his orders so he can fight. That is the duty of an Imperial Guardsman, after all. He remembers telling his captain about the senior who lost his head, only for it to be dismissed as a glitch. He doubts that is the whole truth, especially after seeing the captain's suspicious reaction to his report. Luca stays quiet, knowing many questions are being swept away. Still, he is not dumb enough to go digging when High Command refuses to talk. Deep inside the training grounds, there is an upscale lounge that definitely does not fit the military vibe. This is the visiting room for families, but Luca never thought he would use it. Coming from a poor orphanage, nobody was coming for him. He stares in disbelief at the silver-haired girl standing right in front of him, wondering who she could possibly be. This is Lillian Ramones, Claude's sister. Luca is racked with confusion as to why she is here. He figures she is here to grill him about Claude's death, since Luca was the one leading the team. Lillian tells him to relax. Her family knew the risks the moment Claude signed his life over to the Empire. Sipping her coffee, Lillian explains she is actually here to see him. Claude apparently spoke about Luca often, calling him the most talented friend he had in the entire academy. Her brother wanted them to meet, and trust me, you and I are about to see this story take a wild turn. Alright, you and I are about to see if a simple commoner can survive the schemes of high society. Lillian asks why he seems against them getting closer, and Luca bluntly asks her, why choose someone like me specifically? She wonders if her brother's request isn't enough, pointing out that this union would be incredibly advantageous for his future. Luca goes quiet, knowing she is right. A guy like him marrying a noble woman like her? It is basically a miracle. He thinks back on the sheer grit it took just to become successful in life. If marrying a noble would bring him closer to his goal, he would do it. But it all seems far too easy, making Luca hesitant. Luca refuses the offer, leaving Lillian completely stunned by his sudden rejection. As he stands to leave, Luca bids the white-haired girl farewell, thinking about how he always considered Ellie a fool for trying to escape the Empire. He never imagined he would actually make a huge decision based on a mere feeling. Luca knows a noble would take this as a total insult, and he just hopes this doesn't make things worse. Now pay attention, because here is where she catches our main character completely off guard. Blushing and refusing to let go, Lillian admits she rushed things and asks if they can just start as friends instead. Still surprised, Luca looks at Lillian and tries to clarify that wasn't actually what he meant. Lillian lets go of his hand and sprints away, shouting that she will be back soon to see him again. Staring at his hand, Luca grows pensive. He realizes getting rid of Lillian will be hard. A bit later, inside the training hall, Luca faces a man with a ponytail. This is Quinwan, the legendary combat instructor for the Imperial Guard. He lets out a laugh, surprised that a promising cadet would actually come looking for him. Luca says he wants to learn from him, but Quinwan claims there is nothing more he can teach because Luca is already much stronger than almost any other cadet. Luca admits being the best cadet isn't enough, but Quinwan warns him not to be in such a reckless rush. Unlike other instructors, Quinwan was powerful despite relying on what Luca saw as cheap, outdated mechanical devices. Even though Luca had better hardware, he lacked the instructor's deep legion of combat skills. Clenching his fist, Luca felt grateful for this. He knew that if he couldn't defeat Quinwan, he stood no chance against an actual paladin. Sighing, Quinwan says Luca left him no other choice, and motions for the young cadet to come and attack. Luca quickly charges toward Quinwan, preparing to throw a heavy punch. With zero effort, Quinwan redirects the strike, asking if Luca is just trying to test out his new mechanical parts. As Luca prepares another strike, he knows that even as a retired guard, Quinwan won't feel this. He then unleashes a flurry of blows, giving him no room to breathe. Moving in, Luca leaps toward his opponent to close the gap, hoping to end the entire fight with one single, decisive strike. He reaches out toward the man. Quinwan, his own arm extended, just watches Luca calmly, making no move to defend himself. Grabbing the instructor's sleeve, Luca yanks his arm down, clearing a path for another powerful, high-energy blow. Thinking he has already won, Luca strikes. Still expressionless, Quinwan just watches the attack coming right for him. Watch closely, you're about to see why you never mess with a retired master. Suddenly, Luca finds himself flipped upside down in the air, as if he had been tossed with violent force. Completely shocked and not understanding anything, Luca wonders why he is in the air. He quickly slams his hand onto the ground to recover his stance. Luca thinks that won't stop him, and launches an upside-down kick right toward Quinwan's face. Still on guard, Quinwan swiftly catches Luca's foot and ankle mid-kick. Then, in a split second, Luca is thrown again, sent flying far away. He bounces several times on the ground before finally stopping. Looking fearfully toward Quinwan, Luca wonders what on earth just happened. Approaching Luca, Quinwan states that besides failing to gauge his opponent's strength, Luca had also gotten distracted during the entire fight. Looking down at Luca, you and I can see how bewildered he is as Quinwan asks why he's rushing. Luca realized his first attack should have landed squarely on the man's chin, not missing like that. But the moment Quinwan touched his arm during the attack, Luca's entire body went numb. He lost all control as the kinetic energy of his own punch was redirected right back into him. Luca asks what that move was. Quinwan explains it was simply his personal technique for ultimate defense. Quickly jumping up, Luca eagerly asks Quinwan if he can teach him that incredible move. With a trembling hand, Quinwan looks at Luca and asks if he really wants to learn after being wrecked like that. Quinwan adds that cutting corners always has a price, as a trickle of blood drips from his hand onto the floor. Alright, you and I are about to dive back into Luca's brutal training regime, as the two face off while seated. Luca admits he fell for the bait and completely lost control of his own body. Quinwan explains, it's the RC combat style, a method Luca notes is usually used by common bandits. Luca thinks the military should adopt it, but Quinwan warns there are 3 major fatal flaws. Is the difficulty one? Luca asks. Quinwan agrees, but then mentions a more dangerous issue involving the brain. He nods again, but tells Luca he's not ready to handle the final problem just yet. Luca vows to learn it someday, but Quinwan stands up and tells him it isn't his choice after all the massive amount of money the Empire has invested in his potential. Luca tries to stand and argue, but the instructor cuts him off before he can speak. Then, the instructor demands a straight answer. Pay attention here, training this technique causes permanent brain damage. So can you swear right now never to use it? Looking at his master's back, Luca knows lying is useless. He admits he can't swear it, but promises to be careful. That honesty earns a rare smile from Quinwan. He turns back and places a heavy hand on Luca's shoulder. He admits he likes the kid's integrity, which catches the soldier off guard right before Quinwan sweeps his legs. Luca hits the dirt before he can even blink. As Quinwan walks away, he tells Luca to always anticipate a sudden strike. Only then, he claims, will Luca be truly ready for any real situation. Luca tries to ask what that means, but Quinwan cuts him off. He likes fast learners, so he orders the kid to get up. A bit later, a concerned Alay asks Luca if he's even sleeping these days. Luca looks completely exhausted with massive dark circles under his eyes. As they walk down the hall, he just tells Alay he's been kept very busy lately. He thinks back on the month since his training with Quinwan began. Quinwan hasn't taught him a single move directly. He told Luca to observe, explaining that elite combat is different because it pushes every ability to its absolute limit. It's a superior style using every weapon available to find the most efficient way to kill within seconds. Essentially, it was all about using the mind. Meanwhile, Luca asks how Alay's recent mission went, and the friend says it was nothing but routine work. They keep walking, as Alay notes how easy missions have been. Luca thinks the Alliance is being cautious. Luca wonders if that's why the commander hasn't been seen around the base lately. Alay's family told him the commander only gets deployed when something huge, like a rebellion, breaks out. Now, let's see how deep this mess goes, as Alay confirms a rebellion is being planned right under their noses. Luca calls them idiots for starting a civil war while they're already fighting an external conflict against the Alliance. Alay warns that if they ignore internal rot, the entire empire will eventually collapse from within. Infuriated, Luca pins Alay against the wall, fist raised and ready to smash his face in. In a cold, threatening tone, Luca says he'll ignore Alay's wish to leave, but never his becoming a traitor. Terrified and gasping for air, Alay claims he was just passing an attitude test, but he believes the Empire needs to know this. He desperately begs Luca to just calm down. Letting Alay go, Luca warns him not to say anything suspicious ever again, because he doesn't want to see his name on a rebel hit list, so Alay offers him a free meal to relax. Without even looking at Alay, Luca claims he has plans and tells him to shut up. Alay teases if his big plans involve a girl, but Luca just tells him to get lost and leave him alone. A bit later, we find them in the lower sectors of Aricia. Both men feel nostalgic being back in the lower sector. Luca admits that since joining the military, he never once thought about returning to these gritty slums. Quinwan watches Luca with excitement while they pass by two men brawling in the middle of the street. Luca never expected his instructor to bring him here, where all the city's thermal waste and heat get dumped. As a kid, Luca breathed this filthy air daily, knowing if he didn't escape, he'd be a loser forever. Quinwan calls out, snapping a distracted Luca back to reality as the instructor stands in a dark alley. After navigating through the back streets, they emerge into a surprisingly crowded area. Staring at the shops, Luca asks if this is the black market where curious kids go and never return from. And trust me, as Quinwan asks if it's his first time, Luca realizes the instructor knows this place better than anyone. Alright, stick with me, you and I are about to see how a pair of low-quality limbs can become a deadly weapon. Luca stared at his arm, wondering why Quinwan insisted on cheap gear. He signaled Luca to get ready as they approached the guards. As they got close, a guard barked at them to stop. Quinwan didn't flinch, calmly stating he was there to speak with the boss. The guard scoffed, asking if Quinwan even knew who Alf, the leader of this entire place, really was. Quinwan admitted he didn't, he just wanted a meeting. The guard whipped out his pistol and pressed it right against Quinwan's forehead. Quinwan just smirked. Before the guard could even blink, Luca lunged forward and slammed him into the floor. Dazed and confused, the guard looked up from the ground, only to realize this kid had moved faster than light. As they hit the deck, the second guard tried to react. But Luca was already holding a gun, telling him not to move. Quinwan smiled at the sweating guard, asking if the situation was clear now. Then, he ordered him to go fetch Alf. Realizing they were outclassed, both guards dropped their weapons and gave up. Luca asked what the plan was if he had been too slow. Quinwan just shrugged, saying he would have found another way. Looking around the massive facility, Luca couldn't help but ask what kind of place they had just entered. With a grin, Quinwan called it the hottest spot in the Empire. Since Luca was confused, he revealed it was the Colosseum. Inside a private room, the duo sat across from three intimidating men, while guards watched the door from the outside. A heavy-set man in a sharp suit sat front and center, flanked by bodyguards who looked ready for a war. Quinwan got straight to the point, gesturing toward Luca and demanding the boy be entered into a death match. He even claimed he didn't care if Luca died. As Alf puffed on a cigarette, Luca finally realized why the cheap gear was necessary. Now, pay attention, Alf is about to test them in the most disrespectful way possible. He flicked his lit cigarette straight at Quinwan's chest, but Luca snatched it out of the air before it could land. In a flash, the guards in the room drew their weapons, aiming directly at the two intruders. Alf claimed he only let them in to kill them more easily. Luca stayed calm, realizing the boss was just bluffing. If Alf really wanted them dead, he would have ordered the hit the moment they stepped through the door. 3 guns were trained on them now. Calculating his move, Luca decided it was time to strike first and kicked. He flipped the table upward, using it as a massive shield to stun the boss and his guards. The table shattered as Luca burst through, lunging at Alf and locking him in a brutal chokehold to disarm him. Using the boss's own gun, Luca fired 2 precise shots, instantly dropping the bodyguards before they could even react. Hearing the gunfire, the outside guards rushed in, only to find themselves staring down the barrel of a pistol. But wait, you and I just realized that whole fight was just a simulation inside Luca's mechanical eye. Back in reality, Quinwan shifted the conversation, asking about the man who used to run this place. Alf mentioned Tora, explaining that he was finished after getting caught rigging matches in the arena. Quinwan called it a fair trade, since Alf took the Colosseum from him. Just like Tora had done before. Alf stood up and pressed his gun to Quinwan's head, demanding to know how he knew so much history. Quinwan's expression went cold. He told Alf to settle down unless he wanted to join Tora in the afterlife. The sheer pressure in Quinwan's voice sent a wave of terror through the boss. Alf ordered his men to stand down and sat back, awkwardly asking if Quinwan just wanted the kid to fight. Sizing up Luca, Alf laughed, saying the boy's frame wasn't built for combat and he would be destroyed instantly. He agreed, but demanded a price. Quinwan offered Tora's secret vault, knowing Alf already had the man's mechanical eye. Alf's heart raced as he wondered who this man was and why he knew every one of his secrets. Quinwan just gave a mysterious smile, calling himself a ghost from the past that Alf didn't need to fear. Alf offered them VIP treatment, and Quinwan accepted. With one condition, Luca had to face their absolute best fighter. Luca watched his instructor in awe, realizing he was with a master who could dominate a room without moving. Later, in the Colosseum's cold waiting room, Quinwan sat quietly focused on his digital tablet. He reminded Luca the fight was only 2 hours away. Luca, curious, asked what was actually hidden in that vault. Quinwan said the contents could change Alf's life. Stick around, because you and I are about to see Luca's opponent. His opponent Gabriel, the Iron Fist. Alright, you and I are diving into a world of ruthless fighters. Quinwan warns Luca that a single direct hit could end his life right now. Quinwan locks eyes with Luca, telling him to focus because he is about to reveal the core foundation of their combat style. Relaxing his hand, Quinwan tells Luca to be happy with what he has, but Luca snaps back that satisfaction only leads to losing. Quinwan simply replies, "Water does not break, it only changes shape." Quinwan admits he has watched Luca since his first exam. Seeing his insane potential, he knows seeking the kid out was the right move. Luca calls him out for buttering him up. Quinwan just puts a hand on his shoulder and laughs, totally agreeing with him. Smiling, Quinwan says this might be the last time they meet. Luca smiles back as the arena lights roar to life. Luca steps out, and the announcer introduces him as bold for having the guts to challenge Gabriel in his very first match. The announcer mocks him, calling him a good boy who still drinks from a bottle. It is a nickname Luca absolutely hates. Luca pushes through a wave of boos and insults. People are literally shouting, asking who even let this kid inside the ring. Looking around, he sees faces in the crowd who are desperate to watch him get crushed into the dirt. Now watch this. Luca ignores them all, stepping into the arena while realizing these people truly hunger for his destruction. Actually, that is fine, the hate makes him feel right at home. He is finally back where he truly belongs. He drops his hood, ready to show these losers his worth. In a flashback, we see Luca never truly felt full as a kid. Twice a month, an Imperial officer would drop off survival supplies at the local orphanage, but the greedy owner always sold half of it. To these orphans, hunger was just a way of life, but Luca never stopped training. He would devour every dusty book he could find, and built his strength using heavy stones as makeshift weights. The other kids called him stupid. They said all that effort would just make him hungrier for food they did not have. Luca just stares them down, declaring that if he is hungry, he will just use his strength to take what he needs. The strong eat the weak. Luca knew the rules. Power meant being full, and weakness meant starving. Simple as that. When the others got beaten and cried, they would tell Luca he was just a poor kid like them, and should not act tough. To them, Luca was just another nobody from the bottom of the barrel. He just kept eating and ignored them. Why should he listen to the pathetic whimpering of the weak? By age 12, Luca's name was already on the list for potential Imperial Guard training. At 15, he officially made it. He realized those orphans had no clue about his reality, and he hoped to never see them again. During his training, Luca blocked out his past entirely, convinced he would never have to set foot in that hellhole again. Back in the ring, Luca stands before his opponent as the crowd roars Gabriel's name. Gabriel smirks, thinking Alf must have been high to put a kid against him. But as long as he gets paid, he is happy. Luca scans Gabriel, instantly noticing his body is a complete mess, totally asymmetrical and completely unbalanced. His cybernetic parts are from different factories, causing constant inflammation under his armor. But make no mistake, he is powerful. I know what you're thinking, this guy's a tank. Luca sees his body was modified purely for raw power. Gabriel gets close, taunting Luca. He says the kid is good looking and asks why he does not just become his servant. Luca just smiles back, telling Gabriel he will definitely need a servant after he gets absolutely demolished tonight. That pisses Gabriel off. The Iron Fist storms to his corner, swearing to beat Luca until he is begging for a chance to serve. A man with a microphone in hand finally kicks off the show. He announces the start of this kill or be killed world, while Qinyuan watches silently from the stands. With every eye in the house glued to the ring, Alf announces the massacre is finally beginning. Luca clenches his fists. Looking at Gabriel's modified frame, he knows taking even one hit would cost him his life. Gabriel lunges with a massive punch, but Luca is too fast. He dodges, and Gabriel's fist shatters the concrete floor. The Iron Fist throws another heavy strike, but again he hits nothing but air. Luca sees an opening and lands a perfect kick to the head. Gabriel just laughs, asking if that was a tickle. Luca's heart races. He knows that if he had his real armor on, Gabriel's head would have exploded from that kick. Luca backs off to reset, but he knows he cannot just keep running forever. The ring is too cramped. Gabriel keeps swinging, and while Luca dodges every lethal blow, his own attacks are not doing anything. Trust me, you and I are about to see if he survives this. Everyone is screaming for his head, but Luca is stuck at a disadvantage. You and I are about to see him figure out exactly what Qinyuan wants him to learn. Then, it clicks. Luca remembers his instructor's words: no matter how little you have, you fight with it. No excuses. He locks eyes with Gabriel. The teacher took his armor, sure, but he did not take away his vision. Qinyuan did not just expect brute force. As Gabriel lunges again, Luca realizes this win has to be smart, not just strong. Archie combat is all about using every single resource to the absolute max. Luca activates his mechanical eye. Scanning the threat, he sees Gabriel's fists are basically cannons triggered by a shoulder mechanism. But compared to real weapons, they are slow. And their path? Completely obvious to a genius. Even as the strike comes flying, Luca sees it all. Qinyuan watches from the sidelines, absolutely stunned. A grin spreads across the instructor's face. Luca is a natural. He had already shown hints of the Archie style back during his exam. Time to show his potential. Luca dances around Gabriel's strikes, closing the distance. Gabriel is getting desperate now. He cannot land a single hit. The crowd is losing it, screaming for Iron Fist to crush the kid. They did not pay for this. Luca's focus is laser sharp. He is predicting every move. Pay attention here, he is about to try and pull off exactly what Qinyuan did to him. He grabs Gabriel's mechanical arm and delivers a lightning-fast kick. Gabriel loses his balance, flying into the air before taking a brutal kick to the face. As he is launched back, Luca just laughs. He finally gets why Qinyuan is so invested in him. Gabriel staggers back up, refusing to stay down after that hit. Veins popping, blood boiling, Gabriel is livid. He screams about magic and charges in, convinced his attacks will land this time. He throws a punch so powerful it literally causes an explosion in the center of the arena. Luca just wears a psychotic grin, dodging a blow that grazes his skin before shattering the back wall. Luca closes in. You and I both know Gabriel's power is not enough anymore. Luca explains his philosophy: if you lack raw strength, you fill the hole with something else entirely. He boosts himself up, flips over, and locks Gabriel into a suffocating chokehold. There is no escaping this. Gabriel's face turns pale as the grip tightens. Luca does not hesitate. He snaps Gabriel's neck. The fight is over. As Gabriel's body falls, Luca lands perfectly, without a single scratch on him. He stares down the shocked audience. They can wait for his defeat forever, but he is only going up from here. Behind him, Gabriel's lifeless body lies in the dirt. Pulling up his hood, Luca realizes he only reached that state of focus because the environment was controlled. The stadium is silent. Luca walks away, bored, admitting that Qinyuan actually knows how to teach. Qinyuan is waiting for him with praise. Arms crossed, the instructor welcomes him to RCS combat. Luca admits he learned a ton. Qinyuan then holds something out, telling Luca to take what is being offered. It is a credit chip. Luca asks if he is actually getting paid for the bloodbath. Qinyuan shakes his head. It is for Gabriel's hospital bills. Being generous is fine, but do not be a fool. Luca wants to be a soldier, not a saint. But Kinyuan thinks he is naive about building connections. This is not charity, the instructor clarifies. This is a cold, hard investment for the future. This will help Luca later. Kinyuan mentions his own investment in Tora earlier, reminding Luca that a good soldier shapes their own environment. Luca watches him walk away, realizing he is just another one of Kinyuan's investments. One day, very soon, Kinyuan will collect on that debt in a way Luca cannot refuse. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the hospital. At the hospital, a doctor checks his tablet. Gabriel's old modifications mean he needs the new Shionic. Gabriel loses it. He cannot afford that model. He screams, asking if the doctor is trying to rob him too. Everyone else gets cheap bodies, he rants. But the doctor reminds him no one else is this heavily modified. Meanwhile, Luca is standing in the corner, listening to the chaos. He knows Gabriel is doomed without his help to get parts. Gabriel rages about the cost, never noticing Luca. Trust me, you and I need to see what happens next. Alright, you and I are jumping back into the action where Luca meets a defeated Gabriel. Gabriel's eyes are glowing with absolute pure rage at the sight of him. With his enemy standing right there, Gabriel screams a vow to destroy Luca no matter what it takes. Luca leans in, his face terrifyingly calm. He reminds Gabriel that he already promised to crush him back in the arena. But then, Luca remembers Kinyuan's advice and realizes he's going too far, so he decides to hold back. He walks over to the doctor and asks about that Xionic model. He flashes the credits on his chip, asking if this amount is enough to cover the bill. The doctor confirms it is, but Gabriel is totally lost. He demands to know what the hell Luca thinks he's doing. Luca's answer is simple. He's paying for Gabriel's medical expenses. Gabriel just stares, completely baffled by the gesture. Luca says he just felt like it, prompting Gabriel to mutter that his good boy nickname fits perfectly. Swallowing his pride, Gabriel realizes this is the mercy of a winner. He asks for Luca's name, and Luca gives it. Gabriel vows to return the favor if Luca ever needs his help. He's officially in Luca's debt now, a feeling Luca actually thinks he might enjoy. Now pay attention, because we're moving back to the training ring where two fighters are about to face off once again. Ali moves fast, launching a high kick at Luca's head. Luca just blocks it with one hand, looking completely bored. Using Ares combat style, Luca smoothly spins Ali around and sends him flying across the mat. Training ends, and it's clear Ali's body is feeling every single second of that brutal session. Resting nearby, Ali asks if instructor Kinyuan taught him that style. Luca simply confirms that he did. Ali is surprised, noting that only bandits usually fight like that. Luca admits it sounds crazy, but it's true. Ali admits he can't see himself winning anymore, but Luca praises him for being the only one who can actually keep up. Luca smiles, knowing the Colosseum experience was definitely worth it for his growth. Ali notices his friend is in a much better mood than usual and asks for a favor. Luca agrees. Fast forward to the Acreia Empire visiting room, and Luca is looking seriously annoyed by what's happening. Ali looks away nervously while Lillian sits beside Luca, her piercing red eyes locked onto him like a predator. You and I both know that Luca is trembling with rage as he calls out his friend Ali for this trap. Lillian mentions she's tried visiting him several times already. She wants to know why he keeps avoiding her. Luca's blunt. He's not interested and figured his silence was enough of a hint for her to move on. Ali tries to get Luca to play nice, but Luca snaps at him to shut up. He's already reached his limit. Lillian asks why he hates her so much. Luca tells her straight up. He has no time for girls, only his goals. Lillian argues that knowing her has perks, but Luca says she's missing the point. He explains that relying on a noble's power is a trap. One wrong move and he could lose everything in an instant. Ali looks down as the tension rises. Lillian points out it's strange for him to say that since his closest friend is also a noble. Luca retorts that Ali is his friend first, and his family status doesn't mean a thing to him. Finally, Lillian asks one last time if he'll give her even a tiny chance. Luca finishes his drink and stands up. The answer is a hard no, and he tells her not to come back. As Luca leaves with a cold and serious expression, Lillian and Ali sit there in total silence. Outside, Ali quickly calls out Luca's name. Catching up, Ali says that was way too cruel. Luca just shrugs if he isn't harsh. She'll never take the hint. Ali asks why the hate is so deep. Luca admits he doesn't trust her feelings at all and suspects she's actually plotting something behind his back. Ali thinks he's being paranoid. He suggests that maybe they should just try taking things a little slower next time. Luca cuts him off with a sharp question. Does Ali like Lillian? Ali is stunned into silence. Luca explains he could tell just by the way Ali's breathing hitched and his obvious panic. With a look that says don't push it, Luca repeats he's not interested. He tells Ali that if he has feelings for her, he should make a move himself. Ali stays quiet and unsettled. Ali looks back at the table with a heavy heart, knowing that for him, a chance like that is unfortunately impossible. Deep in the city's magma pit, two figures are perched on a stone pillar right above the boiling lava. Luca is there meditating, trying to master his emotions. Right beside him, Instructor Kinyuan keeps a watchful eye. Luca asks how Kinyuan would have handled that office ambush. Looking back at the chaos, Luca can't imagine any way to survive that room unharmed without a weapon. Curious about the master's approach, Luca listens as Kinyuan says he would have just dived under the table immediately. But trust me, you and I are about to see that this teacher has a very different strategy in mind. Alright, you and I are about to see if our main character can outsmart his own master. Luca wonders what would happen if Kinyuan was alone, but the instructor already read his moves. He knows Luca was trained to be as aggressive as possible. If Luca had grabbed the fat man as a hostage, he would have been gunned down right alongside him. Gangs swap bosses all the time, but Kinyuan would have wiped them out first. Then he would have slipped away with Luca through a hidden tunnel. Staring at his teacher, Luca realized Kinyuan did not just predict his every move, he had a whole escape plan ready. He simply could not get inside the man's head. Kinyuan explains that the RC technique pushes the brain to sharpen perception. Now Luca gets it, his brain issues come from constantly redlining his limits. After a moment of silence, Luca asks if he can still use that RC combat style while using the Legion. The instructor confirms. Once he becomes a guard, he will get a Legion, an implant that uses memory signals to tap into every bit of brain power. Wait, here is the catch. You and I need to see the Legion leave 0 resources for the RC style. Luca realizes the teacher hid this reality. If he had known, he never would have started. As Luca walks away, Kinyuan wonders if this is truly their final goodbye. Luca offers a final thanks for everything. Kinyuan watches him go, telling the boy he is always welcome back if he ever changes his mind. Tension hanging heavy, Luca leaves in silence. Soon after, he finds himself standing deep within the Empire's halls. 3 months have vanished. Castoria explains he has been far too swamped with work to meet with any of the trainees until this moment. The commander checks in, assuming Luca was summoned because of the recent rebellions breaking out everywhere. Luca claims he has just been solo training. Castoria notes that Luca has not been assigned any missions because he has already reached a peak level of strength. Luca gives his sincere thanks. Then Castoria asks about his time with Kinyuan. Suddenly, Luca wonders if this is the real reason he was called in. He realizes High Command has been tracking him through the slums, the black markets, and even his fights at the Colosseum. Castoria cuts to the chase. Has he been learning that RC combat style from Kinyuan? Luca says he is done with it. Castoria agrees, noting that since it is incompatible with the Legion, it is basically worthless to the Empire. He says he gets Luca's position. The talentless are kicked out by Kinyuan, and the talented see no point in learning a dead technique. That is why Kinyuan is the only user left. Luca looks at him, asking if the commander wants him to continue. Castoria wants Luca to keep a strong bond with Kinyuan, so he orders him to keep training. This is a direct order. Surprised, Luca wonders why he is so worried about a retired soldier, but he knows better than to talk back. Luca agrees to follow his orders. Castoria reminds him he is always being watched, adding that Luca is exactly the type to climb to the top from the lower sectors. Meanwhile, Kinyuan looks at a tiny toy helmet. He really did not expect his student to come back this quickly. He repeats that Luca can return anytime and promises not to ask any annoying questions about why he is back. Luca thanks him. He honestly thought it would be a lot harder to convince the man to teach again. Luca asks what they are doing here today. Kinyuan just asks if kids these days still play with these toys. Kinyuan tells the shop owner he is buying everything in stock. He wants every single toy delivered immediately. The owner is stunned, and Luca is just as confused. Why on earth is Kinyuan buying out a toy store? Now check this out, it is an orphanage. Kinyuan tells Luca to set the heavy boxes down and finally take a much-needed breather now. Then a familiar voice calls out. Behind him stands Gabriel, looking annoyed. He asks if Luca thinks he is just some luggage carrier. Luca recalls the big man offering him a hand at the hospital. Since the shop would not deliver, he really needed that extra muscle. Gabriel snaps back that he offered to help with something real, like a brawl. Luca just smiles, saying he does not need help fighting. Checking out the bald giant, Luca notices the new spine implant has actually fixed his balance issues. They both watch Kinyuan at the door. Gabriel asks who that guy is supposed to be. He adds that the man must be legendary if Alf could not even touch him. Luca has to know his history. Luca warns Gabriel to keep his nose out of it unless he is looking to get his head taken off. So, what do you and I think? Is this where the old soldier's story actually began? You and I are about to see why Kinyuan was doing charity work. A bunch of orphans come sprinting toward the two men. As the kids say thanks, Luca and Gabriel hand out gifts. But Gabriel starts grumbling after a kid calls him ugly. Rude. Before long, two kids start brawling over a single box to see who gets the prize inside. Watching this, Luca flashes back to his own unfair childhood. He realized back then that you need strength and power to get what you want. While Luca is zoned out, someone sneaks up behind him and calls his name. Luca turns to find Kinyuan wanting a private chat. Leaning against a fence, The man mentions he visits the lower sector every now and then. He gives the director props, saying he does a great job despite getting almost zero funding for the orphanage. Curious, Luca asks if this was where Qinyuan actually grew up. Qinyuan just says he forgot all that stuff and only stopped by chance. He even suggests that maybe he visited the exact same orphanage where Luca was raised. Looking at him, Luca sees a normal retired soldier. A man stripped of glory, dealing with a nervous system wrecked by a brain injury. Luca wonders if this is his own future if he survives. Suddenly, Qinyuan tells him to get straight to the point. With a dangerous edge to his voice, he asks who told Luca to track him down. His combat eyes flare to life as Qinyuan glares at Luca, asking if Commander Castoria sent him. Stunned, Luca freezes before finally locking eyes with Qinyuan. He asks the man exactly what he means by bringing up the commander. How did Qinyuan know his orders? Was he hiding a secret? Is that why the chief was so worried? As Luca prepares to strike, a dark thought crosses his mind. If this is true, he might have to kill Qinyuan. But pay attention, Qinyuan looks him dead in the eye and tells him to chill if he wants to live. He warns that if Luca goes all out, Qinyuan would have to kill him just to stop the fight. Sweating now, Luca just says he is a soldier of the Empire. That is all he can reveal. Qinyuan laughs it off, saying Luca is so clueless he does not even know which path he is on. Putting a hand on his shoulder, Qinyuan says he won't judge. It is natural for a soldier to follow orders from the top. Then he drops a bombshell. Did Luca really think he visited Qinyuan the first time of his own free will? When Luca shifted that projectile without using his combat eye, the high-ranking brass were already making plans for him. They finally found someone who could master RC skills. Luca thinks he chose this, but it was all a setup. Luca is reeling. He does not want to believe the Empire planned everything. He needs it to be his own choice. He tells the instructor it was his call. Qinyuan just scoffs, saying everyone is a slave to someone, known or unknown. Looking at him, Qinyuan says he probably wants to run from the truth. After all, the kid is still young. As he walks away, Qinyuan tells Luca to head back and feel free to report everything to the commander. You saw that, right? Luca wants to ignore him, but he knows something is wrong. The chief definitely wanted him learning those RC skills. His mind is a mess, trying not to doubt the Empire or his teacher. But what if his burning desire to succeed was actually planted by someone else? Later, in the simulation room, a fully armored Luca sits alone on a bench at the far end of the hall. Staring at the floor, he is frustrated that he couldn't bring himself to report to the commander yesterday. A report would mean a psych exam, and with his head spinning like this, he would definitely fail the test. Plus, the Empire hates dangerous ideas. They would kick him out of the guard and send him to a labor camp. Looking back, Luca realizes Qinyuan probably knew exactly how much he would hesitate to tell the chief anything at all. Suddenly, the doors hiss open, and Ella stumbles out of the training room looking absolutely drained and exhausted. Still panting, he catches a water bottle thrown his way. It is Luca. He notices that Ella seems different lately. Ella admits he's been pushing himself way harder since losing to Luca. The blonde asks if Luca is just here to cheer him on, but Luca gets straight to business. He has a favor. Luca remembers Ella mentioning that some elite families buy their way through tests. Ella warns him that is a deadly secret. Luca asks how he really passed the psych test. Ella stares back, asking if he realizes how dangerous that question actually is to ask. Sitting down, Luca reassures him that he checked the room to make sure they are totally alone. He won't ask why, but reveals the trick. You create a fake, simplified ego to show the world while hiding your true self. Trust me, you and I need to see if Luca pulls this off. Stick with me, things are about to get intense for Luca. Elle explains that trauma can literally rewrite a person's personality, or even wipe their memories. They're doing this on purpose. Luca wonders if it's real. Can acting like a soldier actually create a new ego? That's exactly what LA started doing 2 months before the big test. The catch? Stay in that mindset too long, and you might lose yourself forever. Luca asks where LA learned this trick while planning his own act. He'll just pretend to be his old self. Elle warns him. Messing with psychological tests is serious business, and Luca needs to be extremely careful. Luca's not used to advice from the blonde, but suddenly, his combat eyes flare to life, catching him off guard. Qinyuan is trying to send Luca a message. Later, they meet at a building in the lower sectors. Qinyuan calls this a simple training exercise. He even compliments the structure, calling it a pretty solid gang hideout. But Luca feels uneasy. Qinyuan is acting totally normal, as if the orphanage incident never even happened. The instructor gives the order. 20 seconds. Luca has to clear every single gangster inside that room. Pay attention here, watch how Luca handles this door. He just blasts the lock wide open. Inside, the thugs are just lounging around until the sound of the explosion brings them to their feet. Luca doesn't hesitate. He marches straight toward the first man who spots him. The thug gets in his face, asking what he wants, since he clearly doesn't look like a customer. Luca stays calm, scanning the room. One guy is charging with a weapon, and 2 others are armed. He counts the leader and one more person hiding out in the bathroom. The thug points a gun at Luca's head, saying it's just bad luck he has to kill a kid. He doesn't even finish the sentence. One punch sends him flying into the ceiling before he can blink. You saw that too, right? Absolute power. The other 3 thugs just stare at their friend stuck to the roof. Luca clenches his fists. His mind has been a mess lately, and he's ready to let out some of that rage. The guy on the ceiling drops his weapon. As the others gawk at their unconscious friend, the gun falls. The thugs move to shoot, but Luca is faster. He reaches out and snatches the falling pistol. With the gun in hand, he fires with surgical precision, hitting every thug in the arms and disarming them. Across the room, the gang leader finally snaps and aims his own weapon at Luca. The boss sprays bullets everywhere while cursing like a madman, but Luca dodges every shot. He's honestly shocked that someone this pathetic could even be a gang leader. Then, Luca shifts his focus and aims right at the bathroom door. The door swings open, and a thug walks out with his pants down, holding a shock device in confusion. He looks around at the carnage, wondering what on earth is causing all the noise. Still aiming, Luca tells the guy to knock himself out unless he wants to lose a few limbs. The thug looks at his shock device and carefully weighs his options. A second later, the whole room fills with a blinding flash of electric sparks. Luca stands over the fallen man, but he can still sense someone else's presence inside that bathroom. He walks in and finds a naked woman tied up on the floor. Instantly, his expression shifts to pure rage. He curses the thugs under his breath as he notices the ropes binding the girl. Back outside, Quinwan checks his watch. It took Luca exactly 12 seconds to take them all down. The instructor claps in approval as Luca carries the girl out, using his own shirt to cover her. Luca wants to finish those guys off, but Quinwan says no. They're outsiders, and a slaughter would cause too much noise. Quinwan reminds him that the world is full of people, too weak to defend themselves. That woman suffered because she didn't have the strength to fight back. But Luca? He's become powerful, meaning he'll never have to fear a fate like that. Usually, Luca would call people like her fools, but right now, all he feels is deep disgust. From then on, Quinwan keeps dragging him to the lower sectors, throwing him into fights with zero warning. It wasn't about winning. It was about teaching Luca to adapt and analyze his environment in the heat of battle. Trust me, you and I are about to see just how much this training changes him. Trust me, you and I are about to see how deep these connections run, starting with this mechanic, Gilda. Quinwan asks Gilda for black coffee topped with oil, while Luca takes his plain. Strange taste for a strange man. Luca wonders if this detour to the lower sector was even necessary. Quinwan reminds him that he saved Gilda from a brutal gang. Shouldn't he feel proud of his heroic work? She had survived a horrific kidnapping, yet somehow kept her spirit whole and returned to a normal life. Quinwan reveals the dark truth: she was snatched, all because of a certain friend. Quinwan secretly funded the orphan's engineering studies since childhood. Gilda never knew she had a benefactor lurking in the shadows. Just as Luca asks how long they have been connected, a loud voice echoes through the shop. Gabriel walks in and demands a beer, looking shocked to see Luca sitting there with his instructor. Gilda warns him to lay off the booze. His body is already failing from exhaustion. It was Quinwan who paired them up. Gabriel became her muscle, and she became the only mechanic he trusts. Luca looks the big guy over and tells him he should probably listen to his mechanic. Gabriel huffs about having just one beer, but Quinwan quickly pivots, asking Luca why he is picking fights with thugs. Now pay attention, the gang is already targeting Luca, and Quinwan warns that even he won't be able to protect Gilda anymore. Still, the instructor assures them the thugs won't be crawling back to this shop for quite some time. Gilda asks for a timeline, and Quinwan says it could be months or maybe even years. Luca realizes he will never be allowed back in the lower sectors alone. His masters simply won't permit it. He looks at Gilda and Quinwan, realizing this might be the very last time they ever meet. Even after her tragic experience, Gilda has returned to her work, while Gabriel faces more danger at his job. But Luca warns himself not to feel any pity. Maybe staying away is for the best, Luca thinks, finishing the last of his coffee. Behind closed doors in the imperial capital, Luca delivers his report, as Chief Castoria notes that Quinwan continues to act in strange ways. Castoria reminds him that he was a late bloomer as a trainee, only getting this shot because the Empire was in dire need. Even Castoria, the commander, admits he has no idea who Quinwan really is. Back when Castoria was just a recruit, Quinwan was already an elite within the Imperial Guard. He figured Quinwan was a ghost, a specialist in the darkest secret operations. Luca is stunned, especially since the instructor seems to have taken a real liking to him. Out of every trainee Quinwan has ever trained, Luca is the only one who lasted. Castoria calls Luca excellent, but warns he is vulnerable to influence, so he orders a mental evaluation. Luca just nods, having expected this. Castoria gets blunt. There are only two paths left for trainees caught in a high-stakes mission like this. Either they are silenced forever to bury the secret, or they rise into the elite heart of the Imperial Guard. Castoria hopes for the latter, but Luca coldly replies that he is simply following his orders. If this mission succeeds, Luca is betting on the commander to have his back when it matters most. Now you and I are about to hear a crazy offer. Castoria promises to adopt Luca if he succeeds. Luca Castoria has a nice ring to it, the chief laughs, leaving Luca frozen in pure disbelief. Luca keeps wondering, could the chief centurion really want him to be his own son? Still reeling from the big news, Luca lines up for his psych test as the cold robot prepares to begin. The machine detects a trace of happiness in his expression and asks if something good just happened. Luca just laughs, telling the droid to mind its own business and get the test started already. Elsewhere, Ilya is absolutely destroying a punching bag, sending it flying with a brutal series of strikes. He finishes the sequence with a crushing kick and then prepares one final explosive punch that sends the entire heavy bag flying across the room. Gasping for air, Ilya finally stops his brutal training. He grabs a container of thick green fluid and begins rubbing the oil into his joints with a pained expression. Luca watches from nearby, noting that Ilya has pushed his body to the breaking point. Is this even the same guy? With a smirk, Luca asks if he managed to pass the mental evaluation. Trust me, you and I just watched a true bond form. He has Luca's back. Alright, you and I are watching a legend rise. Ilya admits he can't share details yet, but he will need a favor very soon. Luca responds that if Ilya is ever in danger during combat, he will save him, even if it means risking his own life. Ilya thanks Luca, promising to explain everything soon, though he hopes it does not turn out the way Luca is imagining. Luca would be lying if he said he was not curious about the secret, but he decides not to interfere, letting things unfold naturally after gaining the chief's trust with a successful psychological exam. Luca's immediate goal is to become a member of the Castoria family. It is the only thing on his mind right now, but the peace does not last. The commander announces a new military order. Its purpose is to crush rebels, led by the Ramones family. Upon hearing that name, Luca looks at Ilya in total shock. Remembering Lillian, Luca realizes he finally understands exactly what kind of favor Ilya wants to ask. Soon after, several soldiers board a military train, which then shoots off the tracks at a very high speed. Luca introduces himself as the leader of the 21st Army Suppression Battalion, and his subordinates quickly salute him. Luca realizes the officers are just using trainees as platoon leaders because they view this whole mission as simple training. His platoon is split into two, totaling 27 people, with Sergeant Kodra serving as his assistant, mostly composed of veterans. They are not stupid. They know they are just training tools for academy kids. This makes it harder for them to follow orders, but Luca knows he has to take control. He considers two different options. Now pay attention here. Luca declares in a threatening tone that he is clearly superior to every single one of them. He tells them straight up follow his orders, or any disobedience will be punished. Luca chooses force to shatter their doubt and distrust as the whole unit stares him down. However, the sergeant places his hand on Luca's shoulder, asking if they can step aside and talk for a moment. But Luca quickly grabs the sergeant's arm, surprising him, then throws him toward the other soldiers. Luca barks at him, demanding to know why he touched his superior without permission. Is it because of his age? As he walks, Luca says he is from the slums too, but asks if they know the big difference between them. Standing over the sergeant, Luca looks down at him and declares the difference is his absolute superiority to them all. They might not see it yet, but they will. He is the best platoon leader they will ever see. The sergeant, still kneeling, listens to all of this without saying a single word. Standing up, Kodra admits his mistake and promises to be more careful. Luca then turns away. Luca realizes the sergeant understands his attitude and that he has not chosen the easy way out. Let's pivot here. Deep in rebel territory, a ship approaches the stronghold while the suppression platoon stands ready in formation. With a hand on his face and in total disbelief, Ilya sighs upon learning that his friend used force against his own platoon member. Luca just shrugs. If he is too nice, they will never respect him. To them, he is just a kid. Suddenly, the lighting in the room changes, catching everyone by surprise. A man on stage addressing the soldiers announces they are skipping the formalities and getting to work. The commander explains that the rebels occupied an arcane outpost, controlling all operations from that location. It is a fortress, 2 walls, a dome shield, and 5 arcane anti-aircraft towers guarding the perimeter. The 11th Brigade, wearing full body armor, must destroy the towers while the remaining forces launch a flanking attack. The Empire is deploying massive power. The operation starts in 1.5 hours, and they need to be fully prepped by then. Soon after, Ilya and Luca find themselves standing outside by their vehicles. Despite anticipating this, Ilya wonders if their role as mere support is any different from a picnic. Luca explains the Empire does not want them destroyed. After a moment of thought, Ilya looks at Luca to speak. Luca cuts him off, asking if he is trying to bring up the Ramones family. Luca adds that even if they are close, there is nothing they can do. If Ilya helps rebels, his family cannot save him. Ilya replies that he is not expecting a miracle, but he hopes to at least save Lillian. An angry Luca asks if Ilya loves her so much that it is worth his life. Ilya admits she was his first love. Luca tells him to man up, declaring he has ignored this for long enough. Trust me, this is bad. He warns Ilya, try to save her, and you will die. Alright. You and I are about to dive into a story where loyalty and betrayal collide. Luca gives Ilya a final warning and walks away. Then, turning in the opposite direction, Ilya walks off into the distance. But thanks to Aries' strength, Ella knows Luca was lying. His friend is planning to save Lillian no matter the cost. It did not matter if Ella agreed. For her own sake, Lillian had to be taken out of the picture. Ella hoped it would happen in the chaos. He prayed Lillian would not be alive if they eventually crossed paths. Meanwhile, Luca stares at his helmet, knowing the head and chest are the most critical spots to protect. As long as those stay intact, soldiers survive. Just then, Kodra approaches, looking for the squad leader. Luca asks what he wants. Kodra mentions he knows Luca's skill and has already cleared things with the brass. Luca snaps back with a cold response. But Kodrak asks that in combat, Luca actually listens to his advice. Since Kodrak has served the Empire for 10 years, Luca tells him not to worry about it. He promises to listen to valid ideas. Moments later, their transport ship finally touches down. They have reached the rebel base. The doors hiss open, and the armored brigade begins their rapid deployment. This is the Myrmidon Model Brigade, wearing mechanical suits. Their only job? Neutralize those defensive towers. Everything depends on them. The order to fire rings out, and the brigade ignites their thrusters for an assault. They all charge forward together. Moving with blistering speed, they leave fiery trails while heading straight for the rebel anti-aircraft towers. Meanwhile, the towers charge up massive amounts of energy to retaliate. Now, pay attention, here is where the fireworks start. A soldier unleashes a rain of missiles toward the tower. Simultaneously, the tower fires an energy beam, but the soldiers are too quick and dodge it. After the opening salvo, they launch another explosive strike, targeting the base of the barrier. A massive explosion erupts, but the barrier holds. Suddenly, two glowing red eyes pierce through the thick dust. It is one of the soldiers, still relentlessly advancing toward the tower. The tower fires again and misses. Closing in, the soldier prepares a strike with every ounce of force. With a massive spear, he delivers a crushing blow against the energy shield. The impact causes cracks to spread. Nearby, other soldiers continue firing missiles to keep the pressure on. Finally, the barrier shatters under the armored brigade's power. You and I both saw that coming, right? Luca is stunned by how quickly they broke through. They must take the towers out within 1 minute of entry. If they fail, they will lose the advantage. If the armored units mess this up, the suppression forces will be forced to take the hit themselves. An order flashes through the comms. The towers are down. It is time for the next phase. The battlefield is a dangerous, cruel place. But Luca loves the rush of pure adrenaline it provides. Honestly, without that thrill, he probably would have lost his mind years ago. Luca heads for the exit and orders his battalion to follow. This is the perfect time to test his limits. The plan is for the infantry to swarm. The fort's underground tunnels are a literal labyrinth. They have old maps, but the rebels have definitely modified the layout to their advantage. Amidst the explosions, one soldier notes the rebels likely blocked most entrances to keep the Myrmidons out. They reach the entrance. The soldiers stay cautious, so Luca declares he will be the one taking the lead. Kodra immediately protests, saying it is too risky with the tunnels likely riddled with traps. Luca asks if the sergeant is just scared of his death. Kodrak simply answers with a yes. Before he can say more, Luca snaps his helmet shut. He does not care what happens to him. Pushing forward, Luca repeats that he is leading and orders the squad to stay behind him. He feels a chill, like his own men are ready to kill him. But he has no time for that. Luca knows he has to eliminate Lillian before I can get there to rescue her. And that is where we leave it, trust me. You are going to want to see who gets to her first. Alright, you and I are about to see a hero who refuses to sacrifice his men. Instead, he decides to shoulder every single risk alone, taking on the burden so his loyal soldiers do not die. Just as Luca processes the plan, a trap triggers right above him. Seeing the danger, Kodra screams out his name in pure panic. In a flash, Luca draws his steel and slices the trap pipe clean through before his movement sets it off. By using Ares' secret method, Luca pushes his senses past the limit. Even his sense of taste and chemical detection now provide him a flood of tactical data. Behind him, the entire squad just stands there, absolutely floored by his speed. Luca can feel his pulse pounding, and the pressure in his skull reaching a breaking point as he pushes himself further. Blasting forward, he is frustrated that his men are so slow, even wanting to punch Kodra. He knows the theory, but now he feels the reality using stimulants for too long is melting his brain. He finally reaches the heavy door. On the other side, rebels wait with itchy trigger fingers, until Luca suddenly boots the door open with massive force, sending the metal slab flying into an enemy. The rest of the rebels immediately scramble, leveling their weapons at the intruder. As they open fire, Luca draws his sword. Standing his ground, he deflects every single incoming bullet with a blur of steel. The second the firing stops, he lunges into their ranks, instantly tearing through 2 enemies in a brutal spray of red ketchup. He then spins, catching a third rebel in the neck for a quick, silent end. Now watch this part carefully. The last soldier panics, shoulders a bazooka, and fires point blank. But with one effortless swing, Luca cuts the rocket in half, making it blow up before it even touches him. Through the thick smoke of the explosion, the rebel cannot see a thing. He just prays that his enemy is dead. Suddenly, Luca bursts through the cloud, charging like a demon. By the time the rebel sees him, it is already game over. The rebel is helpless. Just then, the Imperial platoon catches up, witnessing the aftermath and the red ketchup left in Luca's wake. Looking at the carnage, Kodra's face is frozen in pure terror. With blood still dripping from his blade, Luca asks the sergeant what's the holdup. He snaps that they are moving, so keep up. Out of nowhere, heavy gunfire erupts from the rebels. They are pinning down the Imperial soldiers who are diving for cover behind a wall. Assessing the room, Luca realizes he did not expect the interior to be this massive, which means established defensive lines. A quick map check shows they are deep enough to hit the evacuating nobles at any moment. He immediately launches a drone to scout out the enemy formation. The feed shows about 100 troops and several civilians. Lillian might actually be hiding among that group. The sergeant warns Luca that they are too far ahead and thinks they should wait for backup to arrive. It is a smart play, especially since Luca's brain is fried from overusing the system. Let's see if he survives together. More shots ring out, but they are not coming at them. The rebels are focused on a different target entirely. Luca spots another Imperial unit arriving. Seizing the moment, he orders his men to charge while the rebels are completely distracted by the new threat. The rebels swing their guns toward the newcomers, who have already locked down a defensive line with their heavy shields. But against that level of rebel firepower, those shields are not going to hold for more than a few seconds. Luca mutters to wait. He knows the rebels have weapons strong enough to punch right through his armor, so he stays cautious. They have got 8 high-powered guns active, so he needs to time his strike for when at least half of them are reloading. The second he sees an opening, Luca leaps over his men, shouting for them to fan out and take cover. Every rebel gun in the room immediately targets the main character. Watching their leader jump into the line of fire, Kodra is stunned. However, small arms fire cannot even scratch Luca's gear. Once he hits the floor, he pulls his own gun and starts picking off the high-threat weapons. He fires, blowing those weapons up in massive explosions. Moving like lightning, Luca dives into the enemy center, making it impossible for them to get a clean shot. Then, with a devastating sword sweep, he shears off a rebel's legs like he is trimming a hedge. In this chaos, Luca is a god. One rebel is so terrified of dying that he drops his gun and surrenders. Luca tells Kodra to round up the prisoners, and Kodra moves to obey instantly. Scanning the fallen bodies across the floor, Luca recognizes the soldiers. They all belong to LA's platoon. His friend is pushing forward, but he is treating his own men like disposable trash. Luca is absolutely seething with pure rage. We are about to save LA. Stick with me, you're about to watch an Imperial soldier forced to choose between his friend and his mission. If he finds Lillian, he has to kill her immediately. Luca didn't give a damn if she hated him, as long as he could keep her breathing. He ordered Kodra to clear out and meet up with another squad. Kodra, the field surgeon, looked Luca in the eye and told him he was a terrifying soldier, but a failure as a commander. Luca shot back that without him, they would have lost everyone, then demanded to know what the problem was. Kodra's reply was cold. Luca had abandoned his men multiple times to go solo, and that is not leadership. Pissed off, Luca snapped that his men were just dead weight who couldn't even grasp his strategies. He was sick of hearing them whine about being sidelined. Kodra warned him that even a monster like Luca won't stay at the top forever. Luca told Kodra to save the mockery for that day, and the surgeon promised to remember it. As he walked away, Luca added that he'd keep the warning in mind and reflect on those words if he ever actually failed. Kodra wished Luca the best, surprised that such a massive ego could coexist with such an open mind. Advancing deeper, Luca passed scorched stone walls and the bodies of fallen nobles. The same slaughter was likely happening elsewhere as the cleanup crew hit the tunnels. He had to face it, this wasn't just a battle brother, he was a true friend. But that friend was burning through soldiers for a personal obsession, wasting lives for nothing. A real squad leader would never gamble his men's lives just to hunt down some rebels. Even if his friend found Lillian, there was no escape. Her death sentence was already signed. Luca knew his friend loved her, but he didn't have to die with her. It was just a reckless emotional breakdown. Suddenly, a noise caught his ear, and Luca spotted a man trying to hide. He immediately surrendered, identifying himself as a member of the noble Ramones family. Luca didn't care about the surrender, he only wanted to know where Lillian Ramones was. Cowering, The hostage swore he had no idea where she went. Now watch closely here. Luca sees the man's gaze shift, confirming he was lying through his teeth. Luca grabbed the man's eye, making him shriek in agony. He asked again which way she went. This was his final warning. The hostage caved, saying she went down, though he wasn't sure if there was a shortcut. He wasn't a main family member. Luca then asked if he'd seen his friend. The hostage said yes, weeping that the blonde guy left him like this, barely alive. He called Luca's friend a psychopath, but before another word could come out, Luca ended him, spraying blood everywhere. Walking off, Luca told himself the man was doomed anyway, so he just made it quick. Normally, taking a life felt like nothing. But today, Luca felt a strange weight in his chest. Gunshots and screams were drawing closer. If his friend really chose betrayal, what was Luca supposed to do? Meanwhile, Luca stood in a silent room, surrounded by a mountain of corpses. Through all this chaos, he remembered how his friendship always left him worried about the future. Now he needed an answer. What happens if his friend turns on the Empire? Determined, Luca stepped over the bodies and through the door. He walked down a hallway paved with the bodies of dead soldiers. You and I saw this coming. He enters the ruined hall and calls his friend's name. The blonde man turns his head to confirm Luca's arrival. Luca immediately accused him of throwing his men's lives away for his own selfish desires. Standing right there, the young blonde man was acting as a human shield for a small group. Luca recognized Vigo, Ramones, and his heirs, and Lillian was right there with them. He confronted Luca, claiming all this blood was on her hands. Luca gripped his weapon, knowing this couldn't be swept under the rug. The intruder challenged Luca directly, telling him to stop talking and draw his sword. Luca unsheathed his blade, promising to beat some sense into him. Right then, he braced for a brutal showdown. He knew that even with a plan, a real fight was full of dangerous variables. Seeing the Ramones family slipping away, the intruder realized Luca was just stalling for time. He decided to kill the family first, even if it meant Luca hated him forever. At least he wouldn't have his friend's blood on his hands. But Luca saw through it and screamed that Lillian was the new target. Trust me, things just got wild. The intruder lunges, only to be stopped by his former ally's shot. All right, let's see if Luca can actually stop this unstoppable intruder. Luca fired just to predict trajectories and slow him down. But the intruder had amplified his cybernetic signals, reaching speeds far beyond human reaction. There was no way Luca could stop him with that shot. The Ramones family guards finally reacted, training their sights on the intruder. He effortlessly parried the first shot with his gauntlet. The bullet ricocheted, nearly taking out the guard who fired it. With a fluid spin, the attacker slashed the second guard with his blade. Vigo Ramones screamed for mercy, but the assassin's sword pierced his skull instantly. With the guards dead, the intruder slaughtered the father and mother without hesitation. After the carnage, he declared that Lillian was the only one left. Now pay attention, because the assassin knows Luca can't stop him. He stares down Lillian Ramones, promising that her death is the only thing he'll remember from this mission. He raised his sword for the final strike. He offered her a painless death, claiming it was mercy. Strangely, Lillian just started laughing while tears streamed down her face. As Lillian laughed hysterically, Luca desperately yelled for the intruder to stop. Luca lunged forward, tackling the warrior away from Lillian. They tumbled together while the young woman watched the chaos from afar. Gasping for air, Lillian turned back toward the confrontation. The assassin quickly pinned Luca, pressing cold steel against his throat. Luca asked if he noticed Lillian's expression. She looked relieved. Then, the intruder dropped a truth that changed everything. Lillian was finally free from being used as a pawn. Luca was confused and angry, but the intruder just stood up. He told Luca to stop protecting her because she's a traitor. Luca stood up, arguing that treason was just an excuse for murder. If they were truly traitors, their defense would have been stronger. Luca knew his logic was sound. The invasion was tough, but taking down the family was suspiciously easy. The intruder didn't care about the politics, but Luca knew I was in danger. I tried to intervene, but Lillian revealed her father hid an arcane relic. You saw that coming, right? That relic was the Empire's real target all along. She showed them the artifact that kept the fortress running. Luca was baffled, but Lillian knew he didn't really want her dead. She claimed Luca was only acting to keep I from hating him. His real fear was I dying at the Empire's hands. She proposed a deal. The relic could activate a secret teleport. She begged for help so they could all escape the Empire. She offered the relic, leaving the final choice to Luca. Luca was skeptical, but she confirmed it was a hidden route. She told Luca to kill her if he didn't believe her. She just wanted I to live. She suggested they escape and lie to the Empire, though Luca doubted the Empire would miss a device like that. Only the Ramones bloodline knew about this secret underground passage. Luca weighed his options, not caring if Lillian lived or died. He only cared about A, whose ideals could get him killed here. After a moment of silence, Luca looked up. He had a plan. He stopped Ile and demanded a promise. If the teleport failed, I couldn't interfere. Even Lillian wanted him safe. Luca stared into I's eyes, waiting for his word. And that's where we leave it. I gave his word and led the way into the darkness, with Luca following close behind. Trust me, things are about to get even crazier. Stick with me, you and I are about to witness an escape that turns into a total bloodbath. Luca realizes he's already lost. He didn't just fail to stop he's now actively helping a fugitive escape. As they move, I calls out for Luca to wait, forcing the soldier to stop and face him. Lillian reaches out, wiping the blood from I's face before it dries. Luca pushes them forward, muttering that they're lucky to be alive and should just get married already. Lillian holds his hand, apologizing for everything, but A reassures her. He explains she's the one who showed him the world and changed his entire perspective. I admits that if it weren't for her, he would have gone mad by now. He finally realizes he isn't a freak, he's just different. Watching them, Luca can't help but think Lillian is the one who poisoned A's mind. He knows this ideology could topple the Empire. To save his nation from ruin, Luca prepares to act. He decides to eliminate the danger with his own hands, even if it's someone he once called a friend. Luca reaffirms he's no traitor. Reaching the tunnel, Luca finally breathes. Lillian confirms this is indeed the secret route out. Lillian reveals the truth: the Emperor manipulated her father after he learned how to activate the fortress. Luca asks how much deeper they're going. Lillian points ahead, they're almost there, just past the corridor. Now pay attention here. Luca is just paying a debt. He warns her that next time, she's dead. Luca bids I a final, silent farewell, telling him to stay safe as they part ways. Lillian starts planning their escape. She proposes they head to Border City and meet up there once they've split. Lillian invites Luca to flee the Empire with them, but he gives her a flat no. Luca leans back, admitting he's completely exhausted by this entire situation. He regrets helping his friend, and now he's got to figure out how to report this disaster. Luca hopes the Belt Chief focuses on Kinyuan instead. Since neither of them is truly special, he concludes his superior won't ask any difficult questions. The group finally arrives at a massive closed door at the very end of the corridor. Luca warns Ella to stay ready, just in case the teleportation device is missing. As soon as the panel is activated, a strange and unsettling sensation begins to crawl through Luca's. Luca's gaze sharpens as he tries to find the source of that unsettling feeling. The door slides open. He closes his eyes, blocking out his senses to focus entirely on that one sensation. Luca smells it. Fresh blood, thick oil, and cold iron. There's no human presence. But as he looks inside, his eyes widen at what's waiting. Okay, I know what you're thinking. And yeah, this is it. 4 Imperial guards. A total dead end. Fighting one guard was a risk. But 4? That's a death sentence for all of them. If Lillian's captured, she'll break under torture. She'd reveal every secret they have to the Empire. In that moment, Luca realizes his dream of a better life for Ela was just an illusion. The only way out is to kill Lillian now. Attacking the guards would be a suicide mission. The soldiers are watching. Hesitation means death. Ella knows it's now or never. And boom, a single shot hits Lillian in the head, and she drops instantly. Gun in hand, Ela watches her lifeless body hit the floor. A guard demands to know why they waited. Ella lowers his weapon coldly, claiming he just executed a hostage who was no longer useful. The leader demands a full report, asking why they even brought the rebel inside. The soldiers escort Ella away. Luca stands perfectly still, watching his friend be taken by the troops. Later, Luca stands before his captain. He's praised for leading the 21st Battalion. Himeles reviews the report, praising Luca but suggesting he work closer with Kinyuan to build trust. The captain shifts the topic to Lillian Ramon, questioning why she chose Luca as her guide. Luca explains the lie. They used Lillian as a hostage to steal the rebels' teleportation device. Hima still questions him, asking about the strong bond he had with Lillian. Luca stays stone-faced. Trust me, you and I just saw a man sell his soul to survive. All right. You and I are watching, as he admits the plan was to let Lillian live if she cooperated. The captain sighs, ending the chat and telling Luca to go get some rest. But as Luca starts walking away, his superior calls him back for one last word. Hime reveals the Romanes family wiped out Ella's entire battalion with terrifying speed. Noticing Luca's shock, the captain keeps speaking. He clarifies that the report already mentioned how the troops were blindsided by the sudden attack. Luca pauses for a long moment, then says if he had been in Ella's shoes that day, he would have expected his squad to be wiped out, seeing himself as the strongest one there. Himela just smiles, noting he expects big things from him. On a high-speed train, their journey to the capital continues beneath a vast, starry night sky. Luca drifts off in the carriage, his mind replaying the brutal, soul-crushing days of the mission. He thinks about Ela, Lillian, and that border city, the place she had always dreamed of reaching. Now watch this part closely. Luca remembers Lillian's death at the hands of her hero, Ella. He realizes his own presence forced Ella's hand, stopping them from fleeing together. Despite his heavy mourning for them, Luca tells himself he succeeded because he saved Ella. Back at the capital, both men are placed in recovery pods for some much-needed rest. As a reward, they are the only two trainees to receive the 7th rank Crossed Sword Medal of Honor. Later, overlooking the city, Luca meets Ella and questions the bitter irony of wearing a medal for such a mission. Luca admits he never saw her death coming, thinking Ella would have actually fought the Imperial Guard to save her. Staring into the distance, Ella confirms he would have tried if Luca hadn't been standing right there. Ella mentions how happy his family is about the medal despite the scandal, then tells Luca he should just quit the military life. This makes Luca think about the troops sacrificed for love, and for a second, he actually considers walking away from it all. Finally, Ella confesses his family forced him into service, admitting he wishes he could have just died in Lillian's place instead. Without a word, Luca slams a heavy, lightning-fast punch right into Ella's stomach. As Ella groans in pain, Luca warns him to watch his mouth, coldly reminding him that organs are easy enough to replace. Luca turns away, hating his own weakness. He realizes out loud that even if he were stronger, the tragic end probably would not have changed. Ella quietly asks Luca what he just did. Faced with the heavy question, Luca stays completely silent. You saw that too, right? Luca realizes Ella isn't a killer. After everything, he still couldn't save Lillian. With that realization, Luca opens his hand, letting his medal drop and shatter into pieces on the stone floor. It is clear now Luca does not belong to this empire, as massive airships drift across the city skyline. Next, Ella says he is heading home for a few months, since it has been 4 years. Before he leaves, Luca asks about Lillian's escape. Ella reveals the truth: she was running from an arranged marriage set up just for her family's wealth. He explains the twisted condition. She was to be raised as the ghost-like bride of a groom she never wanted, locked away with 0 choices left. Luca is stunned, finally seeing the abuse she endured. Ella confirms that Commander Claude was the only person who ever showed her kindness. Luca finally gets it. Claude was trying to introduce him to her. Suddenly, Ella just starts laughing his head off. Between laughs, Ella reveals they tricked Claude into believing Luca was the Centurion's son. He is actually shocked that the commander bought the lie. Ella explains the lie worked perfectly because everyone already knew how well Captain Hima treated the young soldier. Combined with the fact that Ella belongs to the noble Castoria family, Ella drops the bombshell. Claude believed if Luca got Lillian pregnant, she would finally be free. Luca is absolutely baffled by that plan. This conversation leads Luca to a dark conclusion. While Ella is his friend, he is clearly capable of lying to, and even killing his own men to get what he wants. Yet, Luca's trust in him remains rock solid. Later on, Luca meets instructor Quinwan, who greets him with a sarcastic smirk, calling him a grand war hero. The instructor offers his congrats on the medal, despite knowing Luca is only there to keep an eye on him for the captain. Luca shrugs off the honor, saying it is only a rank 7 medal and cannot compare to the instructor's legendary past deeds. He mentions the captain sent him to learn how to manage subordinates, a mission that seems to genuinely amuse Quinwan. The instructor asks if Luca's men are having trouble following his orders lately. So what do you and I take from this? Luca defends his men, but the instructor just smiles. He says Luca's only problem is being way too soft. He stayed totally unfazed. Stick with me here. Luca explained he'd rather risk his own neck alone than use his men. And somehow, they still made it to the end. But Quinnan pushed back, warning Luca that by constantly fighting on the front lines himself, he was overloading his brain, wasting resources that should have gone toward protecting his subordinates, making everyone wonder if he should have just used them instead. Quinnan argued they should choose to sacrifice themselves, rather than just being sent off to their deaths. He reminded Luca how he helped Gilda and Gabriel, insisting they would have been more than happy to pay him back. To Luca, that just seemed like common sense. Quinnan then dropped some cold advice. Build bonds with your men, but keep enough distance so you won't hesitate to spend their lives. Luca flat out refused, making Quinnan laugh and call him a good boy. That's exactly why he liked him. Then, Quinnan revealed his secret for staying on top in any human relationship. Be loved by others, but never love them back. Pay close attention to Luca's response here. He asked what happens if your conscience just can't handle the guilt of those sacrifices. Quinnan was blunt, advising Luca that he simply needed to get used to it. Otherwise, he'd never truly lead. Soon after, Luca stood up and declared that he would definitely try to be better at sacrificing his own men next time. With a satisfied smirk, Quinnan gave his approval, calling Luca a good boy one more time. The next day, Luca waited alone on a transport platform under the open sky, eyes locked on the horizon ahead. Back in his room, everything changed when his captain gave him a sudden order. He was heading to Creature Academy. Hime explained they always send their best first, and since Alay turned it down to stay home, the slot was open. Hearing that, Luca realized Alay still hadn't moved past the trauma of recent events. But Captain Himai warned Luca that he didn't understand noble society and couldn't survive if he truly wanted to join the Castoria family. Luca accepted the mission. Hemais told him a guide was coming and promised he'd actually enjoy the experience. Finally, the moment of departure arrived. As they finished talking, a transport ship touched down on the platform right in front of Luca. From inside the aircraft, the guide stared at Luca with cold eyes and ordered him to get inside. Once in, he found her waiting, arms crossed tight. We both see that attitude, right? When Luca tried to introduce himself, she shut him down instantly. Seeing her arrogant vibe and tone, Luca wondered if he was dealing with a noble around his own age. He asked if she was indeed the guide the captain mentioned, but her response was just pure, dripping disdain. Without flinching, Luca called her the miss of the Castoria family, which visibly surprised her. She immediately asked how he'd actually discovered her true identity. He explained it was a lucky guess, since only someone from her family would dare to ignore the captain's orders so openly. Luca figured she was the centurion's daughter, sent there to prove the adoption promise was actually happening. A faint smile appeared as he imagined himself finally carrying that powerful new surname. He looked her in the eye and stated he knew exactly who gave her those orders. She introduced herself as Giselle Castoria and warned Luca not to act like some lapdog. With his back to her, Luca began to apologize. But in the middle of his apology, he stopped himself. He hadn't endured all this pain just to bow his head to another noble. With a heavy sigh, Luca leaned back and said the chief would understand where he was coming from. He proposed they just follow orders. Giselle would lead, and Luca would obey. He then asked if that was acceptable. Giselle just turned her face away and leaned back into her seat in total silence. The craft roared to life, soaring over the futuristic city before landing on a platform where they both stepped out quietly. Up ahead, Giselle ordered him to keep up as she led him straight toward his new dormitory. On the way, Luca's eyes were drawn to a massive, imposing statue standing tall along the path. At its base, an inscription greeted Emperor Denrathia, known as the Father of the Nation. Looking up, the newcomer finally realized where he was. This was Kra, a place he'd only ever seen on the news. Their arrival immediately caught the attention of the students, who noticed their uniforms and identified him as a member of the Imperial Guard. Suddenly, a white-haired student aggressively shoved someone else out of his way. The victim crashed hard onto the ground right at Luca's feet. The white-haired kid just scoffed, calling the guy a waste of an implant. "Trust me, we must see what happens next." Giselle asked why he's still standing there. "All right. You and I are jumping right into a world where even your clothes can get you a lecture." From the shadows, a couple of onlookers watch as Giselle keeps venting about every little rule at this academy. Suddenly, a guy named Felix pops up with a big wave and a grin, relieved to see the newcomer finally made it here without his usual escort from the captain. Without skipping a beat, our lead introduces himself to Giselle before asking for a quick, private minute with his old buddy. Surprisingly, she just nods and agrees to wait right there. As soon as she's gone, Felix pulls him into a hug, whispering that the rumors about the Centurion must really be true. Felix jokes that the captain wants him as a son-in-law, but the newcomer just brushes it off as total nonsense. The thought of being Himalaya's son-in-law? Impossible. Those two wouldn't survive a single day together without an absolute disaster happening. He explains his real deal: he's getting adopted just to keep an eye on Qinyuan during his time here. As they walk away, Felix cuts to the chase and asks if he's already gone through any body modifications. Watch this. An object marked 0001 is slipped into his hand. The item in his palm catches him completely off guard. Felix quickly bails with the group, commenting on soldier popularity here. Heading back to Giselle's side, he realizes this intel is gold and will make life way easier, especially after spotting the symbol marking his new dormitory. It's the bottom-tier housing, reserved for commoners from the lower sectors and nobles who have lost everything. But look at his face, the news doesn't shake him at all. His determination stays rock solid. He realizes there's a hierarchy even here, but honestly, it wouldn't be any fun if things were too easy. The two of them head inside to start the full inspection of his new home. Inside, a robot shows him around, and the place looks like a literal palace to his eyes. He can't believe it. Is this place really supposed to be for commoners and bankrupt nobles? Okay, I know what you're thinking. This commoner dorm is better than most mansions, right? That's the power of the Empire's top academy. She hands over her personal number for emergencies, but her cold attitude makes him wonder why she's so hostile. She's just following orders, plain and simple. He has to respect how seriously she takes her job. He mutters that he'll probably never call, and she basically tells him that's for the best. But before she leaves, she stops and gives him one last direct piece of advice. The warning? Stay away from the leader of the dorms. Now, that's how you get someone curious. Giselle claims the girl is the biggest troublemaker in school, just as a mysterious figure appears in the hallway. Alone in his room, he wonders why she'd say that, but a sudden doorbell ring cuts his thoughts short. The door swings open, revealing a young woman standing there. She introduces herself as Barbara, the dorm leader, the exact person Giselle told him to avoid. Our lead formally introduces himself as an Imperial Guard trainee, while his hidden cybernetic eye kicks in to analyze her every move. She checks him out, noting his basic clothes and the fact that he doesn't have a noble last name. Thinking back to the warning, he keeps it simple and just tells her he's the new arrival. Barbara learns he's from the lower sectors and is actually impressed he made it into the guards. He throws a compliment back, saying that becoming the dorm leader is a pretty huge deal too. That earns him a smile. He can tell she must have worked her tail off to get this position. She invites him to follow her for a quick tour. She explains that the tour is her duty as leader, but he realizes she barely had any time between her classes and her bath to come meet him. Watching her walk away, he recognizes that she is someone who is incredibly efficient with her time. Later at the Academy's massive main building, he and Giselle become the center of everyone's attention. Every eye is on them. Giselle shoots a sharp look at her companion, sizing him up in silence. She drops the news that they'll be stuck attending classes together for the next week, per her father's orders. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out. Barbara approaches and gives Giselle a casual greeting like it's nothing. Giselle sharply orders her to leave immediately, looking visibly annoyed by the sudden interruption. Barbara claims she just wanted to say hello, but Giselle shut her down instantly. Trust me, you and I can already feel the heat. Alright, you and I are about to watch Giselle rush Luca to class while he can't help but look back at the lonely Barbara behind them. Standing there alone, her slumped shoulders tell a completely different story than the confident dorm leader image she usually projects. Turning around, he leaves the area behind with a very serious look on his face. When he asks about the tension, Giselle just says they entered the academy at the same time. Still confused, he remembers Giselle's warning about Barbara as they walk down the long hallway. He decides to tune out the gossip and focus on his main goal, becoming a noble in 2 months. Later, while waiting for class, he just sits on a bench and idly spins an object in his hand. Suddenly, another student confronts him, demanding to know what his deal is with Miss Giselle. The guy's defensive attitude makes it painfully obvious he has a massive crush on the noble woman. Deciding to mess with him, the guard mocks his obvious crush, which instantly sends the student into a total rage. In a flash, the guard twists Enrico's wrist and makes him cry out in pain, before scolding himself for taking his own frustrations out on someone else. With watery eyes, the defeated student asks again if he truly has no connection to Giselle. Now sitting together on the bench, the guard finally tries to ask him a question. Pay attention here, this is where you and I find out why Giselle hates Barbara, as Luca offers to talk Enrico up to his crush in exchange for the truth. Opening up now, the student explains it wasn't always this way, claiming their rivalry is all because of a curse belonging to Barbara. He claims dangerous incidents involving hacked androids always seem to break out whenever she's around. Luca doesn't believe it's her fault, but the kid insists she strangely keeps seeking out new friends despite the danger. Apparently, she only became dorm leader because the job is a nightmare and nobody else wanted it. Then, at that exact moment, look closely, you and I see the students approaching Barbara as Enrico points her out down the long hallway. Suddenly, one of the girls pours a drink right over Barbara, soaking her clothes from head to toe. The hostile group surrounds her as the girl who did it mockingly claims it was just an accident. She offers to wash the clothes, but Barbara politely says she'll just go change in her room. The girl mockingly asks her friends if they heard that kindness being refused, before demanding that Barbara hand over the soaked clothes immediately. Barbara can't even fight back, her hands shaking as she grips the wet fabric in fear. From their spot on the bench, the two watch the scene unfold. Luca realizes this is why Barbara needed that shower when they first met, and with his weapon in hand, he decides she's definitely lucky he's around to help her. Driven by his own bad mood, he prepares to launch his daggers at the bullies. With a swift strike, Luca hits the cup and makes her scream, warning that he makes no gender distinction during a fight. Faced with his threat, the girl and her friends retreat in fear. Luca protects Barbara from the group, and the shocked dorm leader can only whisper his name. Luca partially turns toward her, maintaining his alert stance. Safe for now, Barbara finally thanks him, while Luca smiles and wonders if his closeness to her will now make him a target for androids. The student warns him that he's just messed with Kalisa Kano, a very dangerous person. Even with the warning, Luca says he doesn't care about her powerful family since nothing will happen to them. The student reveals that the Kano family runs a gang in the lower sectors and they're probably already hunting Luca. Desperate, he explains that the attack happened because Kalisa's boyfriend was affected by the curse, while Luca processes the information quietly. Their talk is cut short by Giselle's arrival, as she approaches them with a look of pure disdain. Seeing an opening, Luca teases the kid, telling him to finally confess his feelings to Giselle. The student stammers, saying he'd rather admire her from afar before he asks Luca to speak well of him and flees. Giselle notes he's already made a friend, and Luca says the boy's name is Enrico Lon. Giselle admits that Enrico gives her the creeps, feeling like he's always watching her from the shadows somewhere. And that's where we leave it, trust me. You and I know Luca realizes Giselle's mind is already made up. Alright, you and I are diving into a story where the main character doesn't just break rules, he shatters them. Director Alern watches from his desk, telling Luca to relax, since this academy environment can feel like a cage. Luca just nods at the warning. The director isn't fooled though, calling him a wolf hiding among sheep. Luca's response? The real problem is that these sheep have no idea they're about to get bitten. Alern counters that some of these students might look like sheep, but they're actually monsters in disguise. He warns Luca that monsters are far scarier than wolves before handing back his weapon. Guy tells him to stay sharp, and Luca promises he will. Walking away, Luca admits to himself that the Academy's little monsters aren't what he's actually looking for. His true mission? Uncovering the secrets behind the witch's curse. Cut to a dark, silent forest at night. Luca moves alone along the trail behind the gym, mentally preparing for the trouble he knows is coming. The news about Barbara has spread fast. He expects the curse's machines to hunt him down any second. Now pay attention, here's where things get dangerous. Luca stops as a voice from the shadows asks if he's the new soldier named Luca. Let's see who it is. A man steps into the light, mocking Luca for being tracked down by some bottom-tier thug like him. The gang reveals they're here for the Kano family, claiming Kisa's brutal actions are just how they roll. With a nasty smirk, the thug mocks Luca, calling him nothing but an Imperial guard in training. Surrounded by enemies, Luca doesn't even look worried. He just asks if they really think they can win. The leader gives him one chance to apologize, thinking he has the upper hand. Luca fires back with a threat: leave now or lose your internal organs. The thug just gets more aggressive. The attacker lunges with a massive punch. Luca's impressed the guy's technique is actually pretty solid. The enemy dares him to dodge as the fist flies toward his face, but Luca remains perfectly calm. Suddenly, a patrol robot rolls in, asking if anyone needs help. You and I both saw that coming. Absolute panic hits the thugs as the patrol robot appears. The leader orders a retreat but promises they'll settle this later. They aren't crazy enough to fight a robot. Luca isn't interested in being saved. He coldly orders the machine to get lost and leave him alone. The command causes a system error. The robot starts glitching out, repeating that it simply cannot follow orders. The remaining thug watches the machine crumble in confusion, completely unable to grasp what's going wrong. Then, the robot's eye flares with a brilliant, menacing light. Its entire behavior pattern shifts in an instant. With terrifying speed, the machine tears into the thugs. One guy is down before he can even blink. The leader stumbles back in horror, his eyes darting between the metal killer and a calm, standing Luca. The robot lunges for its next victim. The thug's face twists in pure terror as death comes for him. At the last second, Luca intercepts with a heavy kick, sending the robot flying and saving the guy. Terrified and shaking on the ground, the thug screams that Barbara's curse is real and they're all dead. Luca looks down at him, telling the kid to stop believing in ghost stories. Then, the machine charges. Watching the machine's movements, Luca realizes it's redlining, operating at absolute maximum output right now. The system calculated it needs every ounce of power to fight him. This isn't some simple mechanical glitch. Luca understands the truth. This machine is being used like a puppet by someone else. Luca cracks a smile. Finally, he's found something that might actually be fun. The real fight starts now. He blurs to the side, dodging a strike. The dance has officially begun. The android's movements are awkward but clean. Luca wonders if it's running some kind of high-end combat program. Even against a horde, this is way too easy. Luca is itching for a challenge that'll push him. Luca charges forward, delivering a bone-shattering kick straight to the chest of one of the metallic enemies. During the exchange, he spots something strange. This opponent isn't like any standard model he's ever seen. Luca just laughs and taunts it, telling the machine to stop holding back and show its true power. He leaps onto the opponent's shoulders with ease, telling it that simple tricks aren't going to work here. With a final, crushing blow, Luca shuts it down. Getting distracted during a fight? That's a rookie mistake. And that's where we leave it. The machine sends out a final retreat signal before going dark. Wild, right? Alright, stick with me because our main character is just getting started as he watches the last enemy fall. With the battle over, the leader disappears into the forest while Luca just shakes his head, calling it a total pity. Suddenly, security drones swarm the sky, pinning Luca down with blinding spotlights. Later on, Luca sits alone outside the academy when the security battalion shows up, demanding his help with the investigation. Inside the interrogation room, investigator Gillian Campbell drops a bombshell: the culprit is inside the academy, and no one is safe from questioning. When Luca suggests the lower sectors, Campbell shuts it down instantly, saying their firewalls are impossible for outsiders to crack. So Luca asks the obvious question: why would they need a lowly soldier in training for this? It is because of his Archivictima technique. Seeing his shock, Campbell decides to let him in on a little secret. Now pay attention, because she reveals that users of that power are strictly monitored and the truth lies with his instructor. Immediately, the face of Quinwan flashes through Luca's mind, making him wonder who his teacher really is. Right after, Giselle gets in his face, demanding to know why he is following her father's orders and ignoring her warnings about Barbara. Without even looking her way, Luca tells her he won't just stand by while someone defenseless gets tormented. When Giselle asks if he would do it all again, Luca doesn't hesitate, he would have no other choice. She suggests making a deal with Kalisa Konov instead, convinced that a simple conversation can fix this entire situation. Luca just watches her in silence, trying to figure out why Giselle is so desperate to handle this personally. He realizes the truth, she is absolutely certain she can keep Kisa under her thumb. Luca finally agrees, flashing a smile as he mentions he would prefer not to catch the eye of the Academy chief during this. Besides, there is something he wants to go check out for himself. In the meeting room, Kesakanov is already playing victim, claiming Barbara was the one who attacked first. Sitting across from her, Luca asks point blank if she sent her boyfriend after Barbara on purpose. At the unexpected question, Kasa freezes up. Pointing to the board, Luca explains that her boyfriend used the Kanov family symbol for revenge, just like they tried with him. Now you and I both know she is lying, but Kisa just slams the table and screams for Luca to shut his mouth right now. As the tension peaks, Giselle steps in to calm her down. With a look that could kill, Giselle shuts the whole argument down cold. She asks Hisa if she is really going to ignore everything Luca just said before telling him to step out so the girls can talk alone. Outside, Luca confirms his theory about Giselle's control, but wonders why she didn't stop Kisa from the very beginning. It would have been easy to intervene months ago instead of waiting for this specific moment to force a deal. Soon, Giselle walks out, complaining about the drama and reminding Luca that he was supposed to be avoiding any more trouble. With that, Luca explains he was just testing how she controls people, while she asks if he is trying to play detective now. Luca clarifies that he's actually impressed she silenced someone as wild as Kisa with just one sentence. Giselle explains that her family name holds massive weight among the nobility, which is why Kisa obeyed. Without missing a beat, Luca asks if that is why she ordered the harassment. After Giselle asks what on earth he means, he replies that someone who views Barbara as a pawn would definitely use their resources to move her around. Furious, Giselle grabs him by the collar, but Luca just asks if her mechanical brain enhancements are finally starting to malfunction on her in this moment. She immediately lets go, takes a step back, and offers an apology. As she storms off, she warns him to be ready for the consequences if he causes more chaos. Even though she is the prime suspect, Luca can't help but feel that something is seriously off here. He notices her hand is shaking, and wonders what is really going on behind that tough exterior. And trust me, you and I are just beginning to see how deep this mystery goes. Alright, you and I are diving back into a world where nobody is who they seem. Out of nowhere, she offers him a tray of sandwiches, practically begging him to take one. Confused, Luca asks why, and Barbara explains she is just thanking him for saving her from Kisa's harassment. She wants to keep cooking for him, but Luca's already planning his exit to avoid any awkward rumors. When he turns her down, she just drops her head, sitting there in a heavy, awkward silence. She whispers that she doesn't care about the rumors. Luca wonders if her feelings are real, but his gut is screaming that something is definitely way off. He challenges her, pointing out the massive danger of being seen talking to him in public. Barbara just sighs, saying she's lost, while Luca tries to test her true colors. He drops the truth Kisa was just Giselle's puppet, and Giselle won't stop until she gets exactly what she wants. To his shock, Barbara calmly admits she already knew all about the pressure Giselle was putting on her. He pushes harder, asking if she knows the real reason why Giselle's hatred for her runs so deep. Suddenly, her face goes cold. She asks why she'd ever tell him that. Luca watches closely, knowing his little provocation worked exactly like he planned. While he grills her, that creepy vibe he's been getting from her finally starts to make sense. Director Gid's warning flashes through his mind. Be careful of the wolf hiding in sheep's clothing. Now watch this. Luca realizes right then that Barbara herself is the dangerous wolf in disguise. Back home, he hops on his communicator to report that he's tracked down Kisa's boyfriend. Investigator Campbell confirms through the hologram that Kisa set her ex-boyfriend on Barbara on purpose. He praises Luca's instincts. Now it's clear Kisa staged the whole thing just to create an excuse. Luca asks if Campbell will finally use his power to investigate the main suspect. But it's risky, this is the 6th case already, and people are starting to turn up dead. Campbell's only goal is catching the killer who thinks they're untouchable. Luca suggests looking at Barbara, but the investigator shuts that idea down immediately. He claims it's impossible for a low-sector student to control these complex military androids. Luca counters that nobles play by different rules, and Campbell has to agree with that logic. They have the power to mess with android production. Before hanging up, Campbell says he has one last piece of information that could really help. He reveals Barbara is actually sponsored by the powerful Castoria family. Luca is stunned into silence. Once the call ends, Luca realizes this intelligence is a game-changer that needs some serious thought. The puzzle pieces are finally coming together, but there's still one major fragment missing. Fed up with the slow progress, he decides to confront Giselle directly for the real answers. Without wasting any time, Luca moves out to put his new plan into motion. Watching the training field, He recalls Ale's warning nobles must prove their worth or be thrown away. You and I are about to see a different side of Giselle as Luca finds her working hard in the workshop. It's a far cry from the hostile girl he first met. The moment she spots him, she demands to know what he's doing in her space. When he says he just wanted to see her, she literally spits out her water in shock. She tells him to quit playing games and get to the point. Luca calls her out on her lies, revealing he has been officially invited to assist in the investigation. Unfazed, she reminds him that she's the daughter of the Centurion chief, basically untouchable. Luca reveals he knows about her family sponsoring Barbara. Is that why she wants her gone? Giselle claims she just hates Barbara because of the ancient curse, but when he brings up their past friendship, she immediately tries to shut the whole conversation down. Luca points out that the security team sees the android attack as a deliberate, malicious act. He names her as the prime suspect. She freaks out, claiming she was a victim just like everyone else involved. Luca doesn't flinch. He knows criminals love playing the victim, and she has all the tech to pull this off. He tells her to relax, clarifying that he's not outright accusing her. At least not yet. He asks her to spill everything she knows, hoping to find a lead in her story. Suddenly, Barbara appears. She says she's been looking for him everywhere and got worried when he wasn't at his usual spot. Trust me, how did she even find him? Alright, you and I are diving into a moment where Luca is sure he was not followed. He wonders how she blocked his information gathering in just 10 minutes. Irritated, he tells Barbara to wipe that smirk off her face because it is really starting to bother him. Faced with the accusation, Barbara just questions his words. She claims she likes him for saving her from Kisa earlier. Before she can explain, Luca hurls a chair that shatters instantly. Seeing the wreckage, Giselle asks Luca what on earth he is doing. Luca coldly replies that up until now, he was only trying to kill some time. But he is finished with the games. He accuses Barbara of making a fool of him, while a hidden woman calls out her name from behind the debris. Luca's whole face shifts instantly. He realizes Barbara has no clue what he means. His sharp gaze sweeps the room, leaving Giselle frozen. Luca brushes past Giselle and walks straight down the hall. Giselle says she will leave the food for later. She walks away while Luca just watches her go. Before Giselle can leave, Barbara suddenly grabs her by the shoulder. Smiling, Barbara hugs Giselle and whispers a secret in her ear, before letting out a sharp laugh. Barbara says goodbye, promising to see them again. Soon, Luca and Giselle are left completely alone in the silence of the ruined room. Giselle falls to her knees on the floor while Luca stands silently beside her. Pay attention here, this is the moment everything finally clicks for Luca. It proves everything: the culprit, their connection, and who is actually the innocent party. Luca calls her name, but she begs him not to ask anything else. Giselle tells him to just live normally until he leaves the academy. She ends the talk with a plea for him to stop. Later, Luca tries to call Giselle on a holographic screen, but his request goes completely unanswered. He remembers reporting the situation to the chief Centurion since Giselle has been avoiding him after the incident. However, Hema responds in a way he never expected. She leaves the entire case in Luca's hands to handle as he sees fit. It is a weird move. The guards could have solved this instantly, especially with Giselle involved. Even as a trainee, Luca feels the heavy weight of responsibility. These higher orders put him under immense pressure. He accepts the mission, fully aware of the high expectations on him. I know what you are thinking. Seeing that call get rejected makes things look even more suspicious for Barbara. But logically, a low-sector student could never control the academy androids. Then he realizes that only nobles can interfere with them. This suggests that Kisa used Barbara to target Giselle. While searching for another way to reach her, Luca is surprised by a sudden call from Enrico. A hyped Enrico runs up and asks if Luca spoke well of him. Luca smiles and confirms he did, using the boy for his own plan. Soon, Giselle is clear with Enrico, telling him she is not interested and that his presence makes her feel incredibly uncomfortable. She demands that Enrico stop following her right now. Enrico runs away in tears with his flowers while Luca just watches him go. Luca plans to help Enrico later. For now, he leaves his hiding spot with a new goal. Luca calls out to Giselle, and she admits she knew he was there. She threatens to report him, but Luca says it will not work. He reveals he already told the chief about her involvement in this. Giselle is furious, but Luca coldly says he had no reason to warn her. She stumbles back, totally rattled by the news. Her reputation and her position in the family are ruined in seconds. In a rage, she grabs his collar and screams it is all his fault. Luca offers help for the truth, but she scoffs at a lowly trainee guard. He shocks her by asking what if he joins the Castoria family soon. Trust me, you and I are wondering, did she never find it strange being his guide? Alright, let's dive into the moment. Luca finally shows his hand a certified genius with a Medal of Honor and the chief's backing. Luca promises to stand by her no matter the trouble ahead, prompting Giselle to question if he's for real. He explains that solving this case secures his own future with the chief, meaning they both rise together. Just like that, Giselle leans in and confesses everything. She was the one pulling the strings on the androids and the architect behind Barbara's curse. The flashback reveals that Barbara wasn't just some random girl. She was actually someone Giselle trusted with her life. It started 3 years ago. Giselle's curiosity about her family's sponsorship led her to Barbara, who seemed talented and genuinely kind. According to her, everything fell apart because of jealousy. Barbara was popular, and Giselle couldn't handle it when a boy started showing her attention. Terrified of losing her friend, Giselle used a robot disguised as an android to scare the boy away. A childish mistake with dark results. She even rigged the bot with a recording. It was programmed to lure the boy into the shadows and warn him to stay away from Barbara. But here's the thing, the prank went horribly wrong. The boy suffered a head injury and left the academy in trauma. Panic-stricken, Giselle trashed the robot, but an investigation was already underway. Barbara had actually seen her tampering with the machines. She knew the whole truth from the very beginning. That's when Barbara stepped in, suggesting Giselle play the victim to throw the investigators off her scent. Giselle then used her authority to install a mysterious chip that had been handed to her. Suddenly, the android snapped and attacked her. That's how the curse officially began, and that's when Barbara's personality took a dark turn. Soon, Barbara started making twisted demands, insisting Giselle stay away because she needed more victims. Giselle realized she'd been played and was now trapped in a nightmare she couldn't escape. Giselle was completely under Barbara's thumb, with no way out. Suddenly, a glitch ripples through the air, and Barbara's image flickers into view. She keeps asking if Giselle snitched to the boy. Her voice screams traitor, and the sound sends Giselle doubling over in pure agony. You and I have to wonder, how did she hack a personal device with maximum security encryption? As the feedback gets louder, Luca realizes the noise isn't coming from the device at all. They need to get out of there. Now. That mechanical grind? It's a nearby combat drone powering up for the kill. A shot rings out, hitting Luca directly. The force of the impact sends them both flying backward through the air. Luca scrambles behind a pillar, gasping for air. He ignores the pain and crawls toward the young woman unconscious on the floor. He rips a piece of his shirt away, tightly binding the wound to keep from bleeding out. With a drone hunting them, Luca knows a direct fight is suicide while he's leaking blood like this. To make matters worse, his only weapon is a tiny pocket knife. The area is dead silent, meaning no help is coming. His gaze sharpens. It's time to take the fight directly to Barbara. Giselle finally stirs awake, asking if the shot hurt. Luca just grimaces, admitting it's definitely not a tickle. Suddenly, lead starts flying again. They scramble behind the pillar as bullets shred the world around them. Pinning them down like this is bad. Luca curses the fact that he can't even see where the drone is hiding. Then, a plan flashes in his mind. He shouts to Giselle, demanding she hand over a mirror immediately. Using the reflection, he finally spots the drone's position. In one fluid motion, he hurls his knife toward the target. Boom! The blade hits home, and a massive explosion rips the drone apart, sending Luca reeling from the shockwave. Suddenly, Luca's radio clicks on by itself. Confused, he tries to reach Giselle, even though she's standing right there. She tries her own device, but nothing works. Everything is locked down. Barbara's voice chills the air, asking Giselle why she'd betray the only person who ever protected her. As soon as Barbara mentions Luca's name, a hand snaps out and grabs Giselle's wrist with crushing force. With a sharp twist, Luca shuts the device down. He's done listening to the ramblings of a total lunatic. Luca scoops Giselle up into his arms, telling her they need to find cover before the next wave hits. As they make their escape, Felix's voice crackles through the line, confirming he's finally on the scene. Luca asks about the plan, but his new ally admits he's flying blind. Trust me, you and I are about to see this go south fast. Alright. You and I are about to watch a daughter face the ultimate betrayal by her own father. The truth hits her like a brick. She has been completely abandoned by him. As Giselle spirals into despair, Luca tries to stay objective. Chief's daughter or not, she is a civilian, and giving her special treatment could blow the entire mission. Luca turns to Felix to keep moving, while the noblewoman, Giselle, stays silent in the background. Felix spots blood on Luca's arm and asks if it hurts, but Luca brushes it off. With a sharp smile, Felix decides that if the wound won't slow him down, the mission stays on track. He checks if Luca can keep up the pace, and Luca confirms he's ready. But just as Felix keys his communicator to report their position, stating they're all together, a sudden shot rings out, blowing his mechanical arm clean off on impact. They immediately dive for cover, desperate to avoid the next lethal round. Now pay attention, this is where things get dark. Luca realizes the shots came from nearby, yet he can't sense anyone. It feels like the royal guards are attacking. Felix questions Barbara's sensors, but a cold, unfamiliar voice cuts through the air, asking for a chat. Luca is shocked. He actually recognizes the shooter. The voice mockingly notes that if he had aimed for the head, Felix would be dead. Luca snaps back, asking if this guy even knows who he's messing with. The shooter laughs, calling them mere guards in training. He has no time for games and wants to skip the small talk. His demand is simple and terrifying. He wants them to hand over Castoria right now. Luca thinks it's a kidnapping for cash, but the attacker reveals his princess wants the woman for herself. The threat becomes personal, and the mention of Giselle makes Luca realize that Felix has been attacked again. Giselle is completely paralyzed, watching the chaos unfold. Before Luca can act, he sees something that stops his heart. The shooter, cloaked in high-tech camouflage, lifts Felix by the neck, leaving him dangling in midair. Soon, the adversary fully emerges, wearing a combat suit that completely hides his face and identity. Luca spots a red targeting laser bleeding out from the enemy, painting the path ahead of them. That cloaking tech made him a ghost. Until this exact second, he was completely undetectable. Faced with a literal monster, Giselle grabs Luca's hand, shaking with the realization of what's happening. Luca moves to shield her, whispering that he'll buy time. On his signal, she needs to run like her life depends on it. Giselle tries to protest the escape plan. However, with no time to argue, Luca holds her firmly and orders her to follow his instructions. He starts the countdown. Every muscle is tense, waiting for that split second to make their move. As Luca gives the signal, Giselle bolts. He stays behind, training his weapon on the enemy to cover her escape. Shots fly, but they miss the mark. Luca realizes with a sinking feeling that this opponent has superhuman reflexes. The adversary sighs, claiming he really doesn't want to kill a couple of freshmen today. Freshmen? Luca is baffled. Does this guy think they are actually older than they look? You and I saw that coming, right? This guy isn't just some random thug, he's a royal guard. Luca defends himself, realizing his opponent is on a different level. The attacker then reveals that his real target is Giselle, and he plans to deal with Luca first. Thrown back by the force of the attack, Luca realizes that if the fight continues like this, defeat will be inevitable. Still falling, he desperately tries to find any way to turn the tide. Midair, Luca analyzes the field, hunting for a weakness to build a new attack strategy. Analyzing the ground, he spots a glint of metal, a knife. He wonders if it's Felix's. Luca tosses his pistol, aiming to knock the blade right toward his hand. He catches the knife in a blur of motion and launches himself back into the fray. With a savage strike, his blade connects, clashing against the guard's heavy armor. The guard is stunned he got hit, asking if Luca is a user of RC's combat arts. He quickly dodges Luca's next attacks, creating distance between them. After stepping back, the opponent acknowledges Luca's skill, stating he'll finish with one last lesson. He then remarks that although they've only played around a little, things have already gotten complicated. Luca senses the shift in the air. The enemy is serious now. He tightens his grip, waiting for the storm. Bleeding and exhausted, Luca wonders about the opponent's hesitation and if Giselle managed to escape. His vision is blurring, and he knows he has one shot left. The guard warns him to step aside and not throw his life away like that. Luca takes a deep breath. To this monster, this whole life-or-death struggle is probably just some amusing game. Trust me, you and I are about to see what happens when a cadet is pushed to his absolute limit. Trust me, you're about to watch Luca's world fall apart. Rick watches the attack, mocking Luca's training and asking if he's ready to serve the Empire forever. The man glares at him, questioning if Luca really thinks he's invincible. Luca snaps back that the Empire is one thing. He blocks a lethal strike by jamming his blade into the dirt. Luca growls that this guy's cocky attitude is seriously starting to piss him off. The enemy just starts laughing right in his face. Rebels don't last long in the Empire, the man sneers. He finally gives a name, Rick Kaiser, a Republican. Blood drips from Luca's face as he calls Rick a traitor, but Rick corrects him. He prefers the term resistance fighter. Luca lets out a dry smirk, telling him he's all bark. Rick just smiles, promising his bite is much worse. Suddenly, Rick floats into the air, surrounded by crackling energy. He rockets forward at high speed, aiming right for Luca. Luca tries to catch the blow with his bare hands. The impact is so brutal his armored glove starts to shatter. Rick charges again, completely shattering Luca's only remaining arm this time. Rick seizes him by the neck. This is it. He says your one and only chance to beg for mercy. Now pay attention here, because even while he's staring death in the eye, Luca still refuses to back down. Even at death's door, Luca spits out a final defiance. Rick just tells him to say hi to Kinyuan in the afterlife. The last thing Luca registers is the sickening, sharp crunch of his own neck breaking. We shift to the hospital, where Felix suddenly jolts awake. He's screaming for Luca, clutching his body in agony. Luca is right there. He snaps that, of course it hurts, you can't exactly talk after your neck just got snapped. His neck was broken for too long, causing serious brain damage. Luca admits that Felix is actually lucky to be breathing at all. If Giselle hadn't shown up with 4 other guards, things would have ended much worse. Luca was inches away from death himself. Himalayas approaches them, telling Luca to stay calm and stay in bed. Himalayas sits down for the debrief. Luca stands firm, reporting that Felix was a hero who fought until his very last breath. The full story of the disaster comes out. Luca finishes the report, simply stating that's all there is to say. Himalayas drops a bombshell. Rick Kaiser is actually Rick Silva, one of the most dangerous wanted criminals in the Empire. Luca is stunned, but his commander explains that the public doesn't see everything, especially when things get corrupt at the top. Corruption in a supposedly perfect empire? Luca asks exactly what he means. Okay, you and I need to hear this next part. The dark truth behind the mission is finally coming out. He reveals Operation Juliet, a 5-year plan to infiltrate the leadership of the anti-empire group called Nemesis. Nemesis is too smart for regular tactics. Luca asks if the whole operation failed because he couldn't take down Rick. Even without full understanding, Himalayas reveals the plan actually worked. They've already got moles inside Nemesis. It turns out Barbara, that hacker girl, was working for them the whole time. Barbara had been playing the long game to get their attention. Luca stays quiet, his fist clenching as the realization hits. With that, everything Felix's injury and Giselle's suffering, it was all just a move in a game. Luca asks if Giselle knows, but Himalayas says it's better she stays in the dark. Himalayas looks him in the eye, asking if Luca understands why he's sharing these secrets. The word disposable rings in his ears. Luca wonders if he's just another piece of trash to be thrown away after achieving nothing. A glowing digital screen pops up. He's ordered to read it over and sign the document immediately. Luca stays silent for a long moment. Himalayas welcomes him to the Castoria family as the screen reveals an official adoption paper. Back in the room, Luca sits silently while Felix stays drifted in unconsciousness. Old treatment needles are scattered around. Himalayas mentions that the official paperwork is going to take some time to finally be validated. They put a new implant into Luca's spine. He's warned that removing it will cause some serious pain and discomfort for a while. Felix calls out to Luca just as he is about to leave the hospital room. Luca doesn't even look back. He just points to his neck as a silent goodbye and starts walking away. One last good luck, and he's out. As he walks down the hall, every other student is staring him down. And that's where we leave it, looking at the face of a girl who's much more than she seems. It's finally sinking in. Barbara was a spy all along and his greatest enemy. Alright, you and I are diving back in as Luca stares out the window, realizing that the girl's intense actions were definitely more than an act. He starts to wonder if his rough past in the orphanage and meeting Quinoan were actually just a lucky coincidence. He reflects on the academy events, questioning if his choices were truly his own or if someone else was pulling the strings. Even so, he knows he did not crawl out of that dark pit of his life through his own strength alone. With a heavy, determined step, he shoves those doubts into the back of his mind, refusing to dwell on them anymore. Turning from the window, Luca decides it is all just fantasy, and that the captain's information was probably just a loyalty test. He clenches his mechanical hand tight, swearing to himself that he will not let this massive opportunity slip through his fingers. Standing before the door, he reminds himself this is his one shot to change everything. The door swings open, and Quinoan warmly greets him, asking how his stay at the academy was. While the instructor pours some tea, Luca jokes that he had so much fun he almost did not want to come back. Quinoan then expresses deep regret over what happened to Felix. As Luca sits, he hears that his friend was a top-tier recruit before taking the tea. He stares at the cup, wondering if this instructor is actually being sincere. Luca then mentions that Rick Silva Nunez wanted him to pass along a hello and let everyone know he is fine. After a slow sip of tea, Quinoan reacts to the name, admitting he never imagined Rick would actually turn into a traitor. The cadet notes they seemed close, and Quinoan confirms they were old colleagues, even praising Rick's incredible reflexes in the field. When pressed, Quinoan makes it clear he would never maintain any contact with a known terrorist. Now watch this move. Luca decides not to report this to the captain, speaking to Quinoan first because his life is on the line. Seeing his interest, the instructor bluntly asks Luca why he seems to care so much about a man like Rick. Ignoring the question, Luca asks about Archie's combat arts, making Quinoan curious about why a cadet is suddenly asking such dangerous questions. Luca reveals the Empire keeps a secret list of everyone who uses that technique, which is why Rick let him live. The instructor sits in silence, sipping his tea before praising Luca's sharp mind and addressing him formally as Luca Castoria. Quinoan leans in, noting the cadet knows way too much for someone coming from such a humble background. The young man looks him in the eye, replying that he understands exactly what that implies. With that, the instructor begins a history lesson about the very first rebellion in the long history of the Empire. It was led by an immigrant advisor named Noel Mulisa, a man who once helped the Empire with its strategies. Knowing a head-on fight was suicide, Noel chose to use intelligence instead, and that is how the Archie technique was born. Quinoan corrects the name to Archie's combat arts. Luca realizes with a shock that the deadly technique he learned came from a traitor. Quinoan explains that using these specific skills, Noel and his rebels fought the Empire for years, carefully selecting only the most talented people to carry the torch. Luca realizes the technique is insanely effective in a real fight, especially when you have absolutely no other options left. Luca figures out the style was built for fighters who needed to adapt because they were not soldiers, and Quinoan confirms it. The instructor continues, revealing that even against the massive might of the Empire, Noel and his allies always managed to escape. They spread through every Imperial territory, recruiting disposable soldiers to launch constant, annoying attacks on various outposts. It did not matter if the low-level recruits were caught, as they were just used to distract the Empire while the leaders escaped. Luca can see it clearly. Without any specific military gear to identify them, those traitors could blend right into the civilian population. They could fight using Arky's combat arts and vanish into thin air if anyone got too close. Let that sink in for a second. Luca finally understands why Rick spared him and why the Empire tracks every single technique user. When Luca asks how the Empire found them, Quinoan cuts him off, stating that every single person suspected of treason was killed. Quinoan reveals there was simply no time to tell the difference between innocent civilians and hardened traitors. Entire regions were completely purged just to wipe them out. That is how the rebellion was finally crushed, though some users of Arky's combat arts still managed to slip away. When asked if this was a secret history, Quinoan explains the Empire does not hide it, but they certainly do not advertise it. There are three main secrets: the betrayal of Noel Melissa, the bloody massacre that followed, and the shocking fact that Quinoan, the Imperial Guard instructor himself, has actually mastered that very same forbidden technique. Luca asks if the captain brought him to Quinoan specifically because he suspected Luca might have ties to those very same traitors. Trust me, you and I are about to see if Luca can survive this challenge as Quinoan dares him to find evidence. Let's dive in as Quinoan promises Luca one last shot at life if he can find the proof. Luca can't read the guy, but he still claims the instructor has zero ties to the enemy group. Quinoan then warns him that the captain sees things differently, urging Luca to hunt for clues in the lower sectors. With that, Quinoan promises that doing so will definitely help his case. Luca starts wondering exactly how much the captain already knew before sending him on this mission. Before leaving, Luca states he will report every single word to the Centurion captain, and as the door opens, Quinoan bids him farewell. Walking alone at sunset, the scene pulls back to reveal the massive scale of the Imperial city at dusk. Luca stops at the edge of a building, staring out at the fading horizon. Looking frustrated, Luca realizes that both sides seem to be just mocking his desperate situation. He was just a pawn in their game. Watch closely, because surviving this crossfire is going to be nearly impossible. It is getting harder to read Quinoan, and Luca becomes more desperate to uncover the truth of who he really was. After failing to find any info on Noel Melissa, Luca decides he can't just keep sinking into this situation. He concluded his only choice was Quinoan's advice, so he prepared to hunt for the instructor's secret traces down in the lower sectors. Luca remembers the order from Himmlis to watch Quinoan, a suspect who was somehow still allowed to walk free. Now the suspect himself is telling Luca to investigate his own marks in the slums, promising it will help the case. Luca knows that following this trail will lead him right into the heart of the territory where Nemesis operates. So, this feels like a deadly loyalty test between the Empire and Quinoan. There is no turning back now, so Luca prepares to follow the dark trail into the unknown. Luca knows that escaping this web will require extreme caution and won't be easy for a rookie like him. Shortly after, Luca goes to Himmlis to report every detail of the meeting. He admits that his target had openly provoked him. Before the commander, Luca exposes the link between Quinoan and Rick Kaiser, questioning why such a dangerous man is still free. Luca promises to obey even without knowing the whole truth. After a tense silence, Himmlis looks him directly in the eye and declares his full trust in the young soldier. Himmlis reveals that the orders to watch Luca came from high command, as they believe he is the key to finding Nemesis. Luca questions why they would ever keep such a dangerous person as an instructor in the academy. Himmlis explains that it is the only way to keep Quinoan on a short leash, then asks if that clears things up. Luca notes that despite the pressure, Quinoan's perfect self-control hasn't left him with a single opening to exploit. Himmlis urges Luca to keep going. I know what you're thinking, this is impossible. But while others failed, Himmlis reveals that only Luca has made real progress on this mission. Seeing an opportunity, Luca makes a bold request that goes way beyond his rights as a lowly trainee. Soon, a transport capsule screams down from the sky. Inside, Himmlis and Luca sit face to face during the high-speed descent. During the drop, Himmlis asks Luca if he is feeling nervous yet. Honestly, Luca admits he'd be lying if he said no. He then recalls his bold request to Himmlis, which earned him a pass to travel between city sectors freely. He also gets authorization to carry a weapon and full access to funds for his investigation. His new clearance even gives him access to restricted intel, usually reserved for high-ranking officers. Despite the heavy support, the entire situation is still incredibly dangerous. Success is his only option. Inside the capsule, Luca confesses to Himmlis his secret fear of being killed for knowing too much. Himmlis is blunt if the high-ups decide to bury this case. Luca will definitely be the first one eliminated. Even so, Himmless promises to use every bit of his authority to keep Luca safe from the shadows. Right then, Himmless hands over a family card that projects a high-level authorization seal. Luca realizes his life is now completely in the commander's hands, admitting the man is anything but a traditional leader. Himmless tells Luca to greet his new family, and when Luca offers to act the part, the answer is simple. He just has to be himself to motivate Himmless's kids, but that word left Luca wondering about the man's true intentions. Even though he can't guess what Himmless is planning next, Luca had to follow the rules to stay safe. As they landed, he was told they were almost there, and trust me, you and I are in for one wild ride. Stick with me, we're diving into the heart of a powerful family. Surveying the area, Himmless admits it is hard to even like a place like this. Upon landing, he reveals something shocking: he grew up right here. The capsule touches down safely on the platform. Moments later, Himmless and Luca step into a hall overflowing with absolute luxury. Himmless tells Luca to go get some rest first, noting that the official introductions can wait until later. Watching from an upstairs window, Luca spots a crowd of people gathering in the hall below. Down there, Himmless stands right in the center of the crowd, commanding everyone's attention. Luca realizes the power dynamics here aren't much different from what he saw in the lower sectors. He wonders if this is the dream life he wanted, when suddenly, a noise at the bedroom door makes him spin around. It's Giselle, acknowledging that Luca is now a true Castoria. She immediately apologizes for her earlier behavior, calling it completely unacceptable for someone of her status. Luca calmly replies that it was a normal reaction for a civilian, considering the madness of the situation. Then she mentions visiting Felix, admitting that even he did not seem to recognize who she was. Luca tells her not to feel guilty since Felix was just doing his duty, though he denies he's trying to comfort her. With a soft smile, Giselle compares him to a flame that burns brighter than anyone else she knows. She then asks if he remembers her promise to help him, should he ever join the family. He confirms it, noting with approval that this is exactly how an imperial noble should act when claiming what's theirs. Stepping back, the young woman offers to give him some crucial information as a form of payment. Now watch closely. Giselle activates a holographic panel, warning him that her father doesn't help easily. She projects images of his new brothers, advising him to be extremely careful around them. She explains that his sudden arrival is putting massive pressure on the others. The Castorias are a line of soldiers, but the other successors have flaws he doesn't. As an elite soldier, Luca is a massive threat to their future. He agrees that it actually makes sense for the brothers to feel threatened by losing their positions to someone like him. Unexpectedly, he directly questions her about her own position, and her expression shifts instantly. He asks if she has zero interest in becoming the next family head, but she dodges the question. She claims she doesn't want to get involved in the fighting, but she won't stay quiet if someone provokes her. She warns him that he can't afford to just wait around either. She advises him to seize every opportunity. The soldier just smiles, offering that same advice back to her as her new brother. Giselle's mouth drops in surprise. A second later, she bursts into loud laughter at his totally unexpected comeback. Once she calms down, she asks if she can count on his support if her time ever comes. With a smirk, he confirms his support as long as he doesn't get hurt in the process. She offers a handshake, treating him as an ally while wishing her brother good luck. But she warns him this is the first and last time she'll ever call him that. He agrees, noting it would be pretty strange to hear her talking like that all the time. You and I can hear the dinner bells ringing now, as they stand before the family crest, their new alliance finally sealed. In the massive dining hall, the rest of the family members are already waiting at the table. The doors swing open as the new member enters with Giselle. Already seated are the sons, Joel and Nicholas, along with the powerful matriarch of the family, Eva Castoria. The matriarch finally addresses the newcomer, welcoming him. She says she has heard quite a bit about him already. Luca stays serious, staring down the woman who leads this family. Finally, Eva tells everyone to sit, since her husband will arrive shortly. Giselle nods in silent agreement. Before sitting, Giselle whispers a warning: don't let her mother provoke him, because their father won't protect him from internal drama. With that, Himmless enters the room, and the entire table falls dead silent to receive him. The head of the household simply announces for everyone to begin their meal. Before eating, Himmless opens the dinner with a formal salute to the protector of humanity, ending with thanks to the Empire's first emperor. Soon, everyone else at the table begins eating their meal in silence. As he eats, the young man watches them closely, realizing he is the center of everyone's attention. The scene flashes back to a few minutes ago, when he and Giselle were still out in the hallway. Giselle was explaining that the brothers feeling so pressured only proves their massive ambition to take over the family. And trust me, by now, both of them have probably read every single piece of intel on our main character. Stick with me, you're about to see how Nicholas became a powerful bureaucrat just because he's useless in a real fight. As for Joel, he has a much better shot at becoming the heir because the relatives back him as a soldier. Finally, Eva warned Luca to stay sharp because those brothers would try to bait him for any little reason. Back in the present, Luca realizes why Nicholas and Joel are watching him so closely, while he remembers the advice on how to act. Luca then stays silent, focused on cutting his piece of meat with calm precision. Looking at the table, Luca notices Himlas isn't eating until the head of the house finally takes a bite, vowing to exceed his father's legacy. Meanwhile, Ava, the commander's daughter, ate her meal in silence under the maid's gaze. Immediately after, Luca starts digging into his own meat with intense focus. With a smile, Joel breaks the silence and calls Luca's name, making him stop eating and wait for what comes next. Joel starts lecturing Luca, claiming he didn't want to bring up such awkward matters during their very first meeting. With that, Joel attacks Luca's total lack of etiquette, questioning how anyone could have survived this long without knowing the basic rules. While taking the heat, Luca studies Joel's outbursts and the quiet, calculated stillness of the eldest son, Nicholas. From that one observation, Luca realizes Nicholas is the only one he actually needs to worry about. Now pay attention, Joel just asked if someone who never earned a medal in 10 years even deserves the family name. With the insult hanging in the air, Luca scans the table while weighing the reputation of the Castoria family. In response, Luca leans forward and looks Joel right in the eyes with a piercing stare. Luca then dares Joel to test his combat skills, learned from a top captain, instead of worrying about simple table etiquette. Stunned by the challenge, Joel reacts with surprise, his grip tightening around the handle of his dinner knife. Right then, Himla steps in and orders both Luca and Joel to knock it off immediately. Joel tries to play it off, claiming he was just giving their new brother a little example. Himla snaps back at Joel, asking if he's blind to the fact that Luca already knows proper etiquette. Himla soon reveals that Luca was only pretending to be ignorant and questions him directly to confirm it, but Luca just keeps on eating. After swallowing, Luca flashes a smile and says he just made a simple mistake. He justifies himself by saying he just got a bit nervous, since he's never been in a place like this before. You and I can see that Luca's answer caused a very visible reaction on Joel's face. Soon after, Nicholas joins in, mentioning the 7th-ranked crossed sword medal that Luca, the new brother, had actually received. Nicholas admits he feels bad for not becoming a soldier, but he's glad his father found someone as capable as Luca. Joel takes that as a direct jab at his own soldiering skills. Calmly, the eldest son Nicholas defends himself, saying he was misunderstood and that he's sure Joel will achieve great things in the future. Seizing the opportunity, Luca also mentions that he's felt bad about a similar situation in the past. He explains his superiors felt too pressured to send him into battle because of his father's powerful name. The talk continues, and the tension between the brothers only thickens in front of everyone at the table. With every single word exchanged, the family's conflicts become more evident, yet Luca knows this scene is exactly what Himlas expected. As his new son, Luca realizes that behind that serious expression, Himlas, the commander, is actually satisfied inside. Thanks to Ava's interruption, the heat dies down, and the dinner turns into a peaceful banquet. During the event, Ava, the matriarch, officially introduces Luca to the guests as the newest family member, Lucas Castoria. With that, some of the guests approach Luca to strike up a conversation. They already know he's a handful after seeing him stand up to Joel. After checking some info with Giselle, Luca's first day finally ends. Back in his room, a sudden realization puts Luca on high alert for any potential danger. Soon, the silhouette of a man appears at the bedroom door. Approaching the bed, Himlas asks if Luca is still awake. The veteran apologizes for the late hour, but warns Luca that he must maintain a neutral position within this family. As Himlas speaks, the head of the house sits down in an armchair with a glass in his hand. Luca is surprised, noting that alcohol usually messes with the nervous system needed for peak combat performance. Himlas offers the drink, but the young man refuses, stating that learning his recent lesson was already more than enough. Finally, the commander gives some veteran advice, and trust me, you and I need a little impurity to survive this place. Alright, you and I are diving into a world where Luca questions Himalaya about why humanity even matters in this war. Cold sweat drips down Luca's face, remembering how those with that mindset were the very first to be devoured by the Legion. Luca thinks the commander is just drunk, but Himalaya insists this advice is a rare gift for joining the family. Standing up, the family head reminds Luca this isn't a war zone and suggests he find himself a normal hobby. Himalaya places a firm hand on Luca's shoulder. With his advice given, he turns around and leaves the boy alone in the room. Alone now, Luca struggles to understand pursuing impurities when he can barely focus on his own improvements. He wonders if the commander wants another Kinyuan, even though he knows emotional outbursts are exactly what lead to fatal errors. After standing up, Luca wonders how the head of the Centurion could say such reckless things to his face. That sudden talk about impurity revealed a side of Himalaya that Luca never knew existed until this very moment. It felt like senseless rambling, as if Himalaya were actually trying to play the role of a normal, caring father. Day 2 at the Castoria estate begins with Giselle leading Luca on a tour while he plots his next move. Giselle stops at a massive door and activates the security panel. Watch closely, because what's behind this door is going to blow your mind. Before him lies a gargantuan arsenal that fills an entire building. Luca asks if she's the one in charge here, and she mentions her background in mechanical engineering. She explains that maintaining these heavy armaments is a tradition for the women in her family, with her mother leading the way. Walking through the hall, Luca notes that Giselle doesn't look like the greasy type who loves machines. But he hears of the matriarch's legendary skill. Giselle reaffirms that every piece of steel in here is part of their tradition. This massive arsenal is the true backbone of the Castoria family's power. Giselle calls out, but Luca is already mesmerized by something glowing under a single beam of light. His eyes lock onto an imposing combat robot standing in the light. As Luca gets closer, he sees the scars of 1,000 repairs. Then he sees the right arm is significantly larger than the left. It was clearly modified for a heavy weapon. Giselle approaches, asking if this beast caught his eye. She reveals it's the Sela armor, a sacred relic belonging to a Castoria ancestor. It's considered inferior to a Myrmidon today, but it remains a unique treasure to their family. That massive machine's image is now burned into Luca's mind. Later, walking with Himalaya, Luca asks why the family elders live in such isolation. Himalaya explains that elders only advise the head of the family can't be anyone's puppet. They arrive at their destination and stop before the massive, intimidating gates of the Silver Palace. Inside, Himalaya notes there are 7 elders. Just surviving long enough to join them is proof of their worth. Luca cuts to the chase, wanting to know exactly how many elders are actually against his adoption. Himalaya reveals that 2 elders are against the adoption, 4 are silent, and only 1 says yes. You and I both know those odds are absolutely brutal. Himalaya just remarks that the palace is much tougher than it looks. They walk the long corridor in total silence until Himalaya hits the access panel on a final, massive door. A gargantuan room swallowed by a thick, suffocating fog opens up before them. Voices drift through the thick mist, questioning why Luca is even here. Himalaya rests a hand on his shoulder and formally introduces the boy. From their high thrones, the elders look down, whispering about whether this boy can actually survive. Suddenly, a voice commands Luca to step forward. He walks alone, disappearing into the dense fog. With a simple gesture, the elder beckons him closer. The sheer pressure of the moment is written all over Luca's face. Finally, Luca stops just a few feet away from one of the thrones. In a flash, the elder's hand reaches out to touch Luca's face, wishing him a long life and telling him to swallow the chaos. Then, the elder mentions the invisible forces now swirling around the boy. With a hand still on his face, Luca simply nods and says he understands. He turns and walks away from the throne. An elder shifts the talk to succession, suggesting the visitor should leave before they continue the meeting. Himalaya remains silent beside Luca. The commander then calmly states that it's perfectly fine for the boy to stay here. This unexpected show of trust forces Luca to look at Himalaya. Seeing the commander's resolve, the elders finally give in and continue. They leave the palace under the night sky. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. Alright, let us see if Luca can survive his final day here. As they walk, he finally asks Himas why he even let him stay. Himas just turns away, telling Luca he will have to find that answer himself. Just like that, his final day in this house is finally here. Getting ready to head out, Luca pulls open his bedroom door one last time, but his exit is cut short by a shadow in the hall. A kid stands there, pointing a gun right at his face, asking if the rumors about him dodging bullets are true. This is Alio, Himas's son, staring Luca down with absolutely zero sense of danger. Luca tells him to drop the weapon, but Alio just laughs, throwing insults about where Luca came from. Through it all, Luca stays completely stone-faced. Without warning, Alio pulls the trigger, but Luca is already moving to the side. The bullet slams into the wall, leaving nothing but smoke. Now pay attention, because Alio actually has the nerve to scream that Luca should have just stood there. Before the kid can even blink, Luca lunges forward and snatches the gun away. Then, he simply kicks Alio straight down the stairs. The boy hits the bottom, wailing in total shock over what just happened. Walking away with the gun, Luca tells him to go run to his father. He even gives him a script, suggesting Alio say his own uncle just tried to kill him. Right on cue, Nicholas comes charging down the hallway, screaming out his son's name. Seeing his dad, Alio starts sobbing for help. From the top of the staircase, Luca just watches the whole drama unfold in silence. Even the maids are watching from the shadows, knowing better than to get involved. Holding his son tight, Nicholas looks up and growls Luca's name. He demands to know exactly what just happened right this second. In front of the whole staff, Luca calmly explains he was just disciplining a child for pointing a loaded gun at an adult. He adds that he hopes the boy learned his lesson. Nicholas slowly turns to his son, asking if it is true that he actually pulled a weapon. Realizing the truth, Nicholas looks frustrated with his son's stupidity, but he quickly masks his anger. But Luca interrupts him, asking if he is really going to do nothing when someone almost died. Nicholas suggests they take this conversation somewhere private. Both men head into a closed room to settle things away from prying eyes. Inside, Luca just waits. As soon as Nicholas takes a seat, he breaks the silence by addressing Luca directly. Nicholas notes that people might think they were actually fighting. Instead, he is accused of using his own son to hide their alliance, and he sighs over the dangerous risks he is taking. Completely unfazed, Luca coldly suggests that Nicholas could always just have another son later. Luca brushes it off like it is nothing, but here is the kicker. Nicholas reveals he already knows about the secret alliance with Giselle. Luca warns him that if he keeps sticking by Giselle, Jupe might actually end up as the successor. Nicholas explains that if Jupe ever takes power, his own life will be on the line. Luca just sits there, listening to every word. He reveals that Jupe actually has massive support behind the scenes, and he sees Luca as his biggest obstacle. Nicholas laments that neither he nor Jupe possesses Himas's legendary level of power. Luca asks why he feels so threatened by someone with no talent, but the answer is not that simple. It turns out Jupe's military history guarantees him family support. Plus, some elders actually prefer a weak puppet over someone as terrifyingly strong as Himas. Everything clicks. Luca realizes Himas is so strong that the family is desperate for someone easier to control. Luca thinks back to his meeting with the elders, weighing what it really means to lead. With that in mind, he asks Nicholas what he actually wants. The answer is cold. Nicholas needs a rival to boost his own popularity with the family. Suddenly, Luca realizes this entire setup, even putting Alio in danger, was orchestrated for this exact move. He remembers Giselle's warning. Nicholas is the one who most resembles Himas. As Nicholas gets up to leave, Luca hits him with one final question. He wants to know what happens if he becomes so powerful that he surpasses the successor title entirely. Without even turning back, Nicholas just tells him that even if that happens, Luca would still need a partner to hold on to that power. With a sharp grin, Luca says he is being dead serious. Nicholas turns around, reflecting on how he used to think being a noble meant a life with zero problems. As Nicholas starts to leave, Luca offers his help, reminding him that he's currently at the very bottom of the food chain. Finally, he suggests that to keep his word, he is going to report this entire conversation back to Giselle. From the doorway, Nicholas shouts that Luca can keep acting special, but it takes more than that to be recognized as a true Castoria. Luca stands alone in the quiet room. You and I can see he has got a long road ahead, but the real game has just begun. Let's dive back in as Luca and Hima begin their journey together. Luca was intently examining a card while Commander Himela worked on a holographic data panel. Hima, the old veteran, asked if Luca actually cared about that family. Luca claimed it was nothing special, the lack of rest clearly showing on his face. He remembered pushing himself to meet their insane standards, contrasting this version of Hima with the man he once knew. Suddenly, a strange glitch snapped Luca out of his deep thoughts. A digital figure flickered across the screen as the entire transport began shaking. A massive impact slammed into them, throwing the ship off course. Luca realized they were being hijacked, but Hima stayed eerily calm. Now pay attention, Hima already planned for these traitors to attack them. Support was 10 minutes out, meaning they just had to survive. Luca grabbed his weapon, ready. Hima stopped him, choosing to abandon ship rather than be a target. Luca realized the commander was actually a master pilot himself. Hima popped the emergency hatch, promising the car would take the fall. As they plummeted toward the earth, Hima called out to the boy. Mid-air, Hima asked his opinion, and Luca realized Hima was pure bait. It was all a scheme for Barbara to gain the enemy's trust. Prepare for impact! Luca screamed Barbara's name right as the vehicle exploded. Fire and smoke choked the air until the door was blown off. Luca emerged from the debris, alive. Looking around the wasteland, he wondered how they'd survive 10 minutes here. With his hand on Luca's shoulder, Hima watched the horizon as the enemy closed in. Luca's eye glowed with power while a space station watched from orbit. Enemies are closing fast. Hima grabbed his weapon and joked that the weather was perfect. He charged his energy and fired a beam that obliterated the front line. Seeing that level of destruction, Luca figured he didn't need to do much. You and I are finally seeing Hima's real strength. He's literally fighting alone. Facing destruction, Hima noted the survivors, informing Luca that his system would track all targets in 21 seconds. He fired again, turning the landscape into a crater. Luca couldn't believe it, they were hitting targets they couldn't even see. He realized Hima was using satellite coordinates to aim his shots. The commander confirmed he had his own military satellite for personal use. It takes multiple systems. The veteran was handling it all solo, proving why he leads Centurions. Suddenly, Hima dodged a shot as the enemy swarmed their position. A horde of soldiers burst through the dust, finally spotting them. A mech commander ordered his troops to focus fire and leave no trace of Himela behind. A sniper took aim, but Hima just sighed and got to work. Hima told Luca to just stay alive, which sounded way too vague. He laughed, saying Luca must learn to handle vague orders to survive. The world won't be easy. Luca kept firing, but a hooded enemy deflected his bullets with a sword, and trust me, You and I are about to see this go south. Alright, you and I are diving into a world where power is everything and survival is never guaranteed. Smirking, the veteran Himmler spins his body, reading the enemy perfectly as he prepares a devastating counterattack. He blurs across the battlefield, leaping headfirst into the waiting horde. With one massive whirlwind strike, he shreds every single enemy surrounding him in a pulse of raw energy. The commander watches with a satisfied grin, while Luca tracks the sheer destruction through his glowing bionic eye. He knows he needs to focus on the lesson, but surviving the incoming attacks makes that nearly impossible. Right then, it clicks for Luca Himmler isn't here to play bodyguard or save him. As the next enemy lunges, Luca remembers the cold truth in this world: nobody is going to hand you a win. Now watch this, his mechanical eye locks on, analyzing the trajectory before he puts a bullet right through a traitor's skull. There is no time to breathe. Luca fights for his life, just as another enemy opens fire at him. Pushing himself, Luca notices something chilling: his opponent is dodging his shots with the same uncanny, superhuman speed. It leaves him wondering, can these traitors really use the same high-level techniques? He realizes that fighting in a weak body is a victim's fate, but he is different. Lunging forward, he launches his own counter. Luca knows he has to make a move, so he grabs the enemy's arm, catching the guy totally off guard. Without hesitating, Luca delivers a brutal finishing blow that drops the enemy instantly. He knows that worked only because it was unexpected against a pro. He would have lost that arm. After the kill, he pauses to breathe. Standing atop a literal mountain of corpses, Luca sees Himmler skewering the very last survivor with his spear. As they regroup, Himmler looks over at Luca and casually asks if the job is finally done. Himmler mentions that Rick was just waiting for them to get worn down before striking. Luca asks why they didn't set an ambush first. The veteran explains that grabbing Rick wouldn't stop their enemy and would only put Barbara in direct, lethal danger. Plus, it would be a total waste of time. Himmler drops a bombshell: Rick is just a replaceable pawn. Luca is stunned that a leader could be so disposable. As they walk away, Luca asks the big question: is anyone in this world truly irreplaceable? Himmler points a single finger toward a massive structure looming in the distance. Only one person holds that kind of value. While Luca stares at the towering building, the commander adds that Luca actually knows that person very well. Luca goes dead silent as he tries to process that heavy revelation. It's a brutal realization, isn't it? Knowing you are just a pawn, and that anyone would be sacrificed to protect that one person. Still, as they head toward the facility surrounded by massive ships, he hardens his resolve. Luca tells himself he still belongs to the Empire. When he finally enters the main hall under their banner, every single person stops and stares. He marches through the hall with a stone-cold expression, feeling the weight of 1,000 judging eyes. His identification card confirms his new family status, sending ripples through the crowd as cadets whisper about how he got the Castoria name. Others gossip that even if the captain likes him, being adopted into that family is total overkill. Some call it a miracle. But for Luca, the situation is just deeply uncomfortable and wrong. Suddenly, Giselle brushes past him, accidentally dropping something on the floor with a fake little apology. Luca steps on the item, remembering why he joined Himmler: to stop being disposable. But looking at that card, his dream feels impossible. Standing alone in the crowd, he understands he will have to pay a very heavy price. He will risk his life to discover Kenyum's identity. He decides to give it his all until that day arrives. He kicks off a combat simulation, with red alerts and lethal targets flashing all around his field of vision. In the heat of training, he deflects every strike. His life is now a non-stop cycle of machines monitoring his body. At the end of each session, robotic arms go to work on him while he tries to rest. The mechanical limbs continue the procedures, bolting improvements onto his body while the monitors track his steady vital signs. Once it is over, he stands up, analyzing the raw power of the physical enhancements he has been receiving. Glancing at a bin of discarded components, he realizes he has less than a year left before his training ends. He knows he has to hit the lower sector soon. His dream hasn't changed: he will become an Imperial Guard, no matter what. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Alay, who just arrived in front of a massive and imposing Imperial fortress. Back at the training facility, Luca heads down a quiet corridor on his way to the restroom. Stick with me, because as Luca overhears cadets gossiping about A's insane ambition, we're about to see things get complicated. Alright, you and I are watching I become the true heir. Cadets gossip about I's psych test, confirming his long-awaited return back to the academy. A plaque on the wall shows Ely Kartika was officially missing until now. On the stairs, Luca realizes Eiley fought his own brother for that title. Luca sees the heavy look on I's face and knows he hasn't moved on yet. He thinks back to the deaths of Lily and Ramona, and how Easy lost her despite fighting with everything he had. Suddenly, the image of a gunshot flashes back. He remains on the stairs, remembering that she died by Al's own hands. Suddenly, the heavy silence of the room is shattered by a familiar voice calling out to Luca. It is Al, staring down at Luca with a mocking smile. He walks over, saying he is moved by the moment and asks if he should use the name Lucas. Luca shuts him down, it is just Luca. I tells him he is going to drop off his gear and asks for a second, which Luca grants while watching his friend walk off with a small smile. Once settled, Luca brings up how I crushed his brother for power. I clarifies that it was just a formal duel he won by exploiting his brother's short fuse. Naturally, this makes Luca wonder exactly what Eiley did to provoke him. Smirking, Eiley reveals he seduced the girl his rival liked, joking that it was easy since he is so incredibly handsome. Luca's response? He is absolute trash. I pivots the conversation, asking how Luca managed to get accepted into the prestigious Castoria family so easily. Luca compares his life to a tightrope walk, dangerous but nothing new for him. Even the best jugglers fall, but I reminds him the show must always go on. Luca declares he is no longer running from his past. I asks if it is for the girl, but Luca explains he needs power to fix the problems plaguing his family and the empire. Stick with me, because this ambition changes everything. He stays silent, fully committed to this path. Seeing his friends resolve, Eiley realizes Luca's genius is undeniable and concludes that once he makes a choice, there is absolutely no stopping him. Luca welcomes him back, but warns I needs to work even harder. Both stand there, weighed down by heavy ambitions. Eiley offers his hand, proposing they team up again. With a firm handshake, Luca joins the plan. As he is helped up, it is clear Luca's only job is to never fall again. Luca takes a panoramic elevator down toward the glowing city. Luca stalks down a dark street, passing guards as he enters the city's lower sectors, where he finds two wounded men huddled in a dim, gritty alleyway. Suddenly, a hologram pops up, trying to call someone named Gabriel. One attacker slowly rises while Luca stares ahead. Now watch this. The man's mechanical hand lunges forward with lightning speed, reaching straight for Luca's waist. Luca reacts instantly, ripping the guy's arm off with brutal force. The man screams in pure agony as he flees down the dark alleyway. Smirking, Luca admits he is finally feeling at home here, but his eyes turn to the communicator as he wonders why Gabriel ignored his urgent missed call. Luca enters the dark room. He pauses at the door before his gaze locks onto something in the shadows. Seeing Gabriel's limp body on the floor, Luca realizes the cold truth that the call went unanswered because the man was already dead. But Gabriel barely opens his eyes, gasping out that he is not actually dead yet. Later, Luca steps into a cold industrial corridor. He approaches his final destination with intense focus. The blacksmith turns to show off the finished prosthesis, asking Luca exactly what he thinks of the brand new limb. Luca grips the new sword, noting how the handle aligns perfectly with his arm, though he thinks the output strength might need a little adjustment. The craftsman delivered the perfect weapon for combat even without any detailed instructions from Luca. Luca introduces the blade, explaining its name as Cruxus. It means calamity in the ancient tongue, while the pistol is Ruena, meaning destruction. After noting that feminine names require special care, Luca promises to put these weapons to good use. The blacksmith cheers as Luca heads out. Trust me, you and I are about to see some serious carnage. Alright, you and I are jumping back into Luca's story, where he's realizing his current skills won't cut it against a monster. His old gear, completely trashed. It didn't stand a chance and now he has nothing left. A moment later, he finds Gabriel hooked up to machines, bandaged and broken. Luca just stands there, silently judging his contact's condition. Gabriel groans that he took 2 bullets, one to the chest and one to the gut. They didn't aim to kill, though. This was a warning because every faction in this district is currently beefing up their security. It was a message sent in blood, forcing Luca to wonder why Gabriel hasn't just sold out to a gang already. Gabriel snaps back that he'd rather die than be a lackey. He shifts the focus, asking what Luca's doing back after all this time. Luca just sits there, keeping his plans vague and private. As he gets up to leave, Luca promises to return tomorrow, telling the man to actually take his medicine for once. Gabriel keeps shouting for attention, but Luca just keeps walking, leaving the drama behind him in the medical ward. Outside, the city is a blur of neon lights and massive holograms. Luca moves through the crowd like a ghost, checking floating data panels while noting the hospital guards. Gabriel is safe for now. With his contacts secure, Luca's attention turns to the next clue. Pay attention here, because Quinwan's intel points directly to someone very close to the former Coliseum manager. To find his target, Luca needs to dig into the manager's past. He's betting the truth is buried deep in those old records. Still, a question remains. Why would a manager be hiding out in a place like this? From a high roof, he stares at the city's harsh divide before climbing the stairs of a building that smells like dead dreams. Standing under the lights, he tries to figure out why his target came here. Giant holographic fish float through the alley. Suddenly, a sharp memory forced Luca to stop. He looks up at the crumbling ledge and realizes the truth. Out of pure habit, he's ended up back at the place he grew up. Now focused, Luca hurries down a deserted street. Rounding the corner, he spots 2 men and stays hidden. One of them is whining about the director's latest scam. Luca looks up to see children staring hopelessly out of a nearby window. The oldest kid clearly knows the director is a snake, but they're too weak to do anything about it. You and I both know the world doesn't change on its own, and Luca realizes any help he gives is just temporary. Things might get better for a few months, but eventually, the cycle of misery will just start all over again. Suddenly, the two men spot him. They bark at him, demanding to know what he's doing, snooping around their territory. One tells him to beat it, making Luca realize he's actually starting to get a bit too sentimental for his own good. But that sentiment is reason enough to step in. The orphanage director recognizes Luca and tells his partner to back off immediately. As he deflects a punch, Luca notes that the young punk has actually become a guard. After easily dropping the guard, Luca just comments that he's got enough money. The director starts panicking, desperately reminding Luca how he used to give him extra food back in the day. Luca grabs the coward by the throat, growling that his past kindness is the only reason his neck isn't broken yet. Terrified, the director breaks down into ugly sobs, begging for mercy. Luca just tells him he was passing through, and what he saw disgusted him. He completely ignores the director's pathetic promises that things will change. The director keeps swearing he'll be a better man, but Luca just watches him with cold, silent eyes. Seeing the children smiling at the window, Luca's final decision is made. Without a word, he levels the director with a massive punch. He adjusts his hood, warning the scum to feed the kids properly. Luca turns and walks away down the dark alley. Later on, Gabriel is back to his usual self, loudly whining about how much his injuries hurt. He keeps bringing up those 2 gunshots, but Luca tells him to shut his mouth and stop being such a baby. Luca thinks to himself that if he hadn't slept so well, he probably would have snapped that director's legs in half. He decides that hitting people he hates is actually great for his mental health. Maybe he was onto something. Moments later, they arrive in front of a massive building called the Colosseum. And trust me, you and I are about to see things get real as a guard questions Gabriel's suspicious wounds. Stick with me, because Gabriel is about to reveal that their real business is with Luca, not him. The guard immediately recognizes Luca as the good boy, the fighter who wiped out his entire race, and tells him to cool it. Ignoring the trash talk, the guard calls it in, telling Alf that Gabriel and the good boy are here, then leads them upstairs. Inside, Alf welcomes them, already hearing the whispers on the street. He asks Gabriel if he is still standing after taking those shots, while Luca jokes about Gabriel's popularity in this dangerous underworld. Alf tries to act friendly, calling Luca a good boy, but Luca shuts him down. He demands to be called by his real name and asks about his teacher. Alf suggests a match to settle things, but Luca declines, insisting they speak in private. Alf shuts that down fast, saying he is not a warrior and his armed men are there for a reason. Luca, the legendary ex-fighter, just scoffs, telling Alf that his guards are nothing more than ants to him. Alf warns him not to get cocky just because he can throw a punch, telling Luca he is crossing a dangerous line. Luca just gives him a cold smile and tells Alf to obey. Alf crushes his cigarette, calling him good boy again, but Luca calmly reminds him that he already told him his name. Now pay attention as the guards rush in. Luca tells Gabriel to slam the door on this fight. The guards open fire, forcing Gabriel to shield them, while Luca leaps to the ceiling to dodge the hail of lethal bullets. From the doorway, Gabriel yells for Luca to quit playing and finish this. Enemies lock onto Luca, but in the chaos, one idiot ends up shooting his own comrade down. Luca crosses his arms and drops the last of them, while Alf admits his security was basically a joke. Later that night, rain begins to drench the neon lights of the city. Inside an old industrial building, Gilda treats Gabriel, who is whining about the rain making his injuries hurt like hell. Gilda teases Luca about not being waterproof, but he just hits her back with pure sarcasm. Staring out at the storm, Luca realizes that the deal with the left was actually a pretty good move. Turns out, his last name carried way more weight than he ever expected during negotiations. The boss of the Colosseum realized he was facing Lucas Castoria, son of the legendary Imperial Guard captain, and decided this high-stakes gamble was absolutely worth the risk. Luca wants the truth about the man who took out the previous leader, a common mystery on these streets. He makes it clear that he wants every single detail, no matter how tiny it is. You and I both know Alf is dangerous, so why did he just offer to become Luca's servant? Luca explains that in 1 year, when he officially hits adulthood, he will have the right to a servant. But first, Alf has to prove his loyalty. Luca cuts the talk short to focus on a report that might lead to Kinuan. Gabriel asks why he is paying for upgrades if his limbs were supposed to be waterproof from the start. The technician explains that even the best coatings wear out eventually. In the toxic air on rain, they need a refresh every 6 months. Gabriel complains about the price, having never needed this before. Gilda warns him about his parts falling apart, but Gabriel says getting old is just natural. Gilda tells them to stop acting, and Luca leaves a high-value chip on the table to cover the costs for both of them. Clutching the chip, Gilda thanks Luca for his help. Gabriel tries to warn him about Gilda, but Luca tells him to shut it, since he knows nothing. Gilda turns back and asks if the homemade cookies were to his liking, promising they were safe to eat. Luca just takes a silent sip of his drink and says nothing. Reading the files, Luca sees Alf took over the arena perfectly after the old leadership vanished into thin air. Since there are still some survivors left, Luca decides it is time to track them down. A file for Ken Noma pops up, showing he is currently locked in a psychiatric hospital when a massive explosion rocks the building. An armored vehicle roars down a temporary ramp through the pouring rain. Luca is at the wheel as they land hard, wondering why they needed such a flashy entrance for a simple hospital. Gabriel complains that his body has not healed yet and asks if Luca is keeping secrets from him. Luca denies it, but the memory of the gangster who attacked them is still burned into his mind. Gabriel wonders if the shooter is linked to his attackers, but trust me, we are both dying to know how Luca saw it all. Stick with me, you and I are diving into a world where even a simple car ride is a death trap. Luca's expression shifts as he spots something in the distance, catching Gabriel's eye immediately. High on a rooftop, a sniper screams that Luca's been messing with the Aleph gang and ignored their warnings. Gabriel yells back from inside the car, swearing he's not in league with the Coliseum boss. The shooter laughs they saw Luca making deals right after getting shot. It's clear Gabriel is the target now, and Luca needs to find out why. Luca asks Gabriel for a weapon. He explains his own gear isn't meant for civilians. As Luca grabs the arm cannon, Gabriel complains it's way too powerful for him to handle. The enemy's voice crackles over the radio, mocking them. They tell Gabriel he made a fatal mistake, and now their sister just wants to say hello. Now watch this. Luca aims, calculates the trajectory, and locks his targeting system onto the corner of the building. At that exact moment, another shooter launches a heavy projectile straight at the vehicle. Luca fires a perfect shot, intercepting the rocket midair and blowing it to bits. The lead shooter screams as his hand gets shredded. Gabriel sprays the henchman with bullets, forcing the survivors to flee for their lives. Gabriel stares at the aftermath, whispering the word sister as the pieces start falling into place. From the back seat, the hospital guard announces that their backup is only 3 minutes away. Luca dryly notes those 3 minutes already passed, and suggests the man find a better security team. After a quick thanks, Gabriel walks over and hauls one of the fallen shooters up by his collar. He asks if this sister is Martina, from the Lavu and Rose gang, the girl hunting him for saying no. The captive spills the truth, shouting that Martina doesn't hate him, she actually has a major crush on him. He explains that Martina went ballistic after Gabriel rejected her, then ran straight to Aleph for help. The guy continues, admitting she used the gang as a cover just to get close to her target. You saw that, right? Luca actually tells the guy to let Martina know that Gabriel is coming for her very soon. Even though he protests, Gabriel decides it's better to just end this. He wonders if Martina's obsession could be useful, since she's a gang leader. This leverage definitely sparks his interest. A few minutes later, the vehicle pulls up to the front of the psychiatric hospital. They stop in front of a glass door where a man named Ken Noma sits perfectly still. They head inside. Luca watches the patient, who seems eerily calm. He steps closer and calls out Ken Noma's name to confirm it's him. Once he's sure, Luca introduces himself and says he has questions about the arena manager. Even when there's zero response, Luca keeps a close eye on the man's catatonic state. Gabriel sighs, explaining that Ken's been tortured so much that he's basically just a living corpse now. Undeterred, Luca prepares a nerve treatment used by guards, hoping it can jumpstart Ken's broken system. Luca mentions his intel, says Ken is obsessed with blades. Gabriel tells him to quit wasting time and leave. Ignoring the warning, Luca moves in fast while Ken Noma still grips his blade. Luca throws a lightning-fast jab, but Ken blocks it instantly. Suddenly, Ken's eyes regain a sharp, deadly clarity. A brutal exchange of blows breaks out, with sparks flying every time their steel weapons clash. In a flash, Luca catches the knife midair, stopping it with only 2 fingers. With his arm pinned, Ken finally speaks, saying he felt trapped in a swamp before confirming his identity. Ken realizes Luca wants something. Gabriel is shocked, but Luca explains he just needed to wake the man's brain up. As the tension of the fight remains high, Luca demands info on Tora's friends, but Ken Noma asks for one good reason why he should talk. Luca simply promises to break him out of that cage. Freedom gets Ken's attention immediately. Then, Luca turns back to Gabriel. He asks Gabriel to hide Ken for a few days while he puts a loyal crew together. The plan gets even wilder when Luca suggests they start a brand new gang with Gabriel as leader. Gabriel tries to refuse, but Luca threatens to replace him, causing his partner to hesitate on the spot. And trust me, you and I are about to see just how far Gabriel will go to stay relevant. Stick with me, we're entering a world where deals are signed in blood. Luca hands the knife back to his new ally, Ken Noma. Accepting the offer, Ken Noma warns they're on a tight clock. He starts spilling the secrets Luca's been hunting for. Inside a moving car, the puzzle pieces finally start clicking. Luca discovers Tora had a secret friend working independent from any gang. The real truth? Crystal clear. Just like Luca used Gabriel, Quinwan had his own ghost organization with Tora as the face, using elite allies for off-the-books missions. It hits Luca hard. By following the professor's path, is he just becoming a mirror image of the man he's hunting? Facing a massive tower. Now, watch this part closely. Luca has a lead, but the whole situation is still a messy, complicated disaster. The hunt leads him to a massive server room. He steps up to a terminal, eyes locked on the floating screen to start digging. It's confirmed. Tora's life went to hell the exact same day Quinwan was appointed as a professor. Quinwan's endgame is still a total mystery. For now, Luca decides to focus on getting Ken Noma back on his feet. He worries about Gabriel. If the gang gets too big, Gabriel might end up just like Tora, a disposable tool thrown away. Luca sees things differently now. Quinwan didn't fail Tora. He was actually the secret reason for Tora's entire success. His old master's method is finally out in the open. Quinwan balances everything by keeping a cold, calculated distance in every relationship. This way, he never hesitates to make a sacrifice. Even his strongest, most loyal allies are just pawns on his board. It's all a tactic to stay on track when chaos hits, and most importantly, to survive. Luca asks himself what he really wants, just as Quinwan appears out of nowhere to offer congratulations. He says his only goal was for Luca to finally grasp the core basics of the RC Victima arts. The next move? Quinwan wants Luca to keep following the plan until he becomes a carbon copy of his master. Over at the training grounds, Quinwan watches Luca from the sidelines, taking a slow drink from his metal flask. He's actually surprised how easily Luca reached the Mista rank. Luca has no clue what that means, so he listens to the explanation. A Mista is basically a master teacher of the arts. Back in the day, these users were strictly divided by rank. With a shady look, Quinwan drops the subject. He claims those old traditions are basically extinct in the modern world. You and I know Luca isn't buying it. He knows there's a deeper reason he's here. He warns Quinwan to stop pushing his buttons, reminding his master about his infamous temper. Quinwan says some lessons are better learned through practice. As Quinwan stands, Luca realizes that even a master of the RC Victima style still has to deal with physical limits. He tells the old man straight up there's no way that broken body can beat him now. Suddenly, raw energy surges into Quinwan's hand. He warns Luca to guard his head and chest before he strikes. Luca senses a subtle, dangerous shift in his opponent. He realizes Quinwan only swapped out his right arm. The control is insane. Luca couldn't even feel the shift in weight. Using a high-power cybernetic limb with fried nerves is suicide. But a cold, cruel smile spreads across Luca's face. Looking down at his own metal arm, Luca knows this is it. He'll never get another shot like this. Dropping into a stance, Luca gives his master a final thanks. The heavy silence between them signals the start of the fight. Moments later, Luca hits the floor. In his mind, he admits the truth: he's been beaten. Even with every advantage, Luca can't wrap his head around how Quinwan stopped every attack with just that one arm. As he struggles up, Luca asks if his master can see the future. Quinwan just shakes his head. No chance. He explains that RC Victima techniques aren't taught, they're stolen. Luca needs to start using every ounce of his brain power. Lesson over. Quinwan tells him they'll pick this back up in the next class and sends Luca on his way. Ken Noma's face flashes in his mind, a sharp reminder that the mission is far from over. Standing up, Luca realizes that the next part of his journey is a solo mission. It's going to be a brutal path. Even after being dismissed, Luca helps his teacher walk. Quinwan says he owes him one, and Luca just nods in silence. Luca realizes the man who holds every single answer is literally standing right next to him this whole time. That drink left on the bench? It's a reminder of their unspoken rule: always keep your guard up, even with family. Walking back to the office, Quinwan suggests Luca try a real relationship before he replaces any more of his body. Luca just says he'll think about it, but deep down, you and I can see that this complicated bond really does hurt him. Alright, you and I are diving into a world where every bond has an expiration date. Luca had one final wish left. He didn't want to be the one to end Quinwan with his own hands. Hidden cybernetic mercenaries were laughing around a table. As Luca approached, his companion warned him these guys would do literally anything for enough money. Luca grabbed the guy by his collar, snapping that he needed elite soldiers, not a crowd of useless thugs. Gabriel explained that Ken Noma was waiting in a room up on the second floor. Getting him out of the hospital had been incredibly expensive. Luca handed over the chip, demanding they keep it safe, and the others just grunted in collective agreement. As Luca walked off, the sponsor told Gabriel to let those men know he was the one running the show, so they better take it seriously. Upstairs on the second floor, Ken Noma was just sitting there on the edge of the bed. Entering the room, Luca heard Gabriel mention that Ken's name should still be on the hospital's official list. Gabriel added that visitors wouldn't find a thing, only the guards and nurses knew the real truth. A cold smile touched Luca's lips. He grabbed a vial and snapped it right into a high-tech injection device. Now, pay attention. Luca approaches with the injector. But suddenly, A knife goes flying toward Ken Noma as a question is asked. Do you know who I am, Ken Noma? Holding the blade, Ken stares back and confirms he recognizes him, calling Luca a man he can actually trust. With the knife now in his hand, Luca invites Ken to have a little chat. Gabriel stood there, totally stunned by the intense energy clashing between the two of them. Suddenly, Ken Noma lunges from the bed in a fierce attack. Luca reacts instantly, blocking the strike with ease. Luca realizes this guy must have been a monster in his prime. He shoves Ken back, sending him staggering until he hits the bed again. Even while confused, Ken asks what was in that shot. Suddenly, his mind feels completely clear. Luca just says it was a custom medical mix. Ken immediately starts questioning how Luca knows so much. Luca reveals he's hunting the man who sponsored Tora. But before he can finish, Ken just asks for a smoke and a drink. After getting his fix, Ken tells Luca to relax, noting that he looks exactly like a career soldier. Ken finally remembers a key detail Tora used to call the man by the name Noel. Ken explains that Tora couldn't have handled a massive operation like the arena alone. That mysterious man had to be the mastermind. You and I both know something's fishy here. Ken reveals the arena's money was being diverted, but he has one favor to ask first. Luca instantly guesses that the request is about Alf. Ken confirms it. He's desperate for revenge after being left in such a pathetic, broken state. But Luca refuses. He explains that he and Alf are partners now, so Ken needs to let it go. Luca reminds him he's safe under Gabriel's protection for now. He can have his revenge once he's finally out of here. Ken interrupts, swearing he is a man of his word. Luca just listens, thinking about how every person who betrays always says the same thing. Luca glances back at Gabriel, knowing exactly who he can actually trust. Suddenly, the mention of Tora's secret records makes Luca's eyes go wide. The informant explains that Alf must have the records. He tells Luca to look for companies starting with the letter B, because that's how the money reached Nell. Suddenly, Luca realizes something is going down outside. Gabriel rushes over, asking what the hell is happening. A woman is standing there, boot pressing down on a fallen mercenary's head. She asks if they really thought they could win. She tells Gabriel he needs to train his men better. Gabriel just stares, asking why she invaded his base like this. Heading downstairs, Luca asks the woman why she even showed up here. She claims it was a sudden decision and she has business to settle. The two just stare at each other in silence. Luca asks if she thinks she can just barge in and cause all this trouble. She admits she messed up, but asks if it wouldn't have been better to talk beforehand. Luca orders the men to handle the mess while he and Gabriel head out, strictly forbidding them from drinking. The three of them walk through a city glowing with massive neon holograms. As they walk, Gabriel explains that Levion Rose is a gang dedicated to protecting women. He adds that most members were born there, and their leader is a woman too. Luca asks if they've met, but Gabriel only saw her once on a job. Gabriel starts bragging about how beautiful she is, while Luca just watches him silently. Luca realizes Alf might betray him if their interests stop aligning. Right now, he knows Gabriel is an absolutely irreplaceable piece on his chessboard. Trust me, you and I are about to see where this leads. You and I are heading back in as the group reaches the Serene Sea Pavilion. At the entrance, the woman calls out to Gabriel, asking if he is ready for another round before warning him not to dare refuse the lady this time. She claims it is his only hope for survival as the doors open to reveal a thick, crimson mist filling the entire room. Luca's expression shifts instantly as he realizes what is actually going on. Luca instantly drops a girl to counter their sensory blockers, declaring with cold ice in his voice that he will blow the head off anyone who flinches. A guard tries to make a move but gets a brutal hole in his head for the effort. Through the clearing smoke, a woman wielding a fan appears, demanding that everyone stop their fighting immediately. The boss demands to know who allowed this disrespect toward her guest, while a terrified subordinate quickly bows and offers a desperate apology for the mess. Gabriel starts to lose his cool over the setup, but Luca steps in, telling him to keep his head on straight. Now pay attention, because Luca sees right through her deadly game of trying to kill them without dirtying her own hands. The lady apologizes for her guard's over-the-top loyalty and shifts her focus directly to Luca, asking for his name. Luca introduces himself, but shuts down her questions about his business in the lower sectors, telling her it is none of her concern. She warns Luca that he clearly does not understand local power, reminding him that he is deep inside Levion Rose territory. Luca just laughs while she warns him that his noble blood offers zero protection in a lawless place like this, especially with the hostess, Martina, in charge. Martina glares from behind her fan as Luca mocks her, saying some people only think they are important because they hide in large groups. Noticing the rising tension, Martina's servant steps closer and begs her lady to keep her composure for a moment. The servant whispers something private to Martina while Luca stands back, watching the whole exchange with a cold, observant eye. With a sharp snap of her fan, Martina turns around and commands the group to follow her deeper into the building. Once they are inside her room, Martina gets straight to the point, shockingly revealing that the only thing she actually wants is to date Gabriel herself. Luca is floored, wondering why a powerful woman with her looks would be so obsessed with a guy like Gabriel specifically. Gabriel grumbles about hating being under someone's wing, but Luca quickly corrects him, making it clear he is just a sponsor, not Gabriel's commanding officer or boss. Gabriel doubles down on the fact that Luca is not his boss, which sparks a reaction from Martina, before Luca suggests Gabriel should just date her for a while. Seeing Gabriel's absolute refusal, a confused Luca asks him what the big deal is about dating a beautiful woman. Wait, let that sink in for a second. Gabriel reveals she is actually older than his grandmother, making her ancient even to Luca. Gabriel stammers that he would rather drop dead than accept such a terrifying offer. He admits she still looks incredible physically, but the impasse leaves Luca simply facepalming at the sheer ridiculousness of it all. Switching gears, Luca reveals Gabriel now leads a gang and can no longer just enter Levon Rose as a regular. He mentions that his solid ties with Alf at the arena will help Gabriel's new gang get their feet on the ground. Martina isn't backing down though, stating she has never failed to claim any man she has set her sights on. Luca fires back, mocking her by saying this will be her first failure, and it is rare to experience that at her age. Ignoring the sting, Martina promises Gabriel riches and power beyond his imagination, before looking him in the eye and begging him to stay with her. Faced with her intense plea, Gabriel can only grit his teeth, sweating from the sheer awkwardness and embarrassment of the moment. The room falls into a heavy silence as everyone waits to see who makes the next move. Martina finally sighs and switches to business after the refusal, asking why exactly they even want to start a gang in this part of town in the first place. She admits she doesn't want to make an enemy of someone as bold as Luca, leaving Gabriel completely lost by the sudden shift. Martina then laughs at Gabriel, revealing she actually has a thing for ugly guys anyway, just to twist the knife. She calls him pathetic and says the thought of him at her feet gives her the chills, laughing cruelly at his expense. Watching his partner get torn down, Luca notes that it is not just the nobles who have some seriously twisted tastes. Martina composes herself once more and suggests they get back to the serious business they came to discuss. The view shifts to a glowing holographic ad for the local fighting arena, looming over the city. Elsewhere, LF notes how sharp Luca is for working with Levon Rose, as Luca arranges the entire three-way alliance between the gang, the arena, and the lady. As the rumors begin to spread, no one will dare cross Gabriel's path now, especially since Luca knows LF is secretly working for Tora and expects him to play his part. You and I see it, Luca is playing the long game. Alright, you and I are back with Luca, who is currently navigating a dangerous web of lethal alliances. He knows trust is a luxury when everyone is this unpredictable. Martina offered an experienced ex-soldier as backup, a girl who is a total pro even without finishing her official training. Luca realizes Martina is just using this to sniff out his identity. He decides she is way more useful than Gabriel's idiots. She's handling security, so it's a total win for him until the girl suddenly asks if he comes from a military family. He asks her why, because he is way too young to have taken her down that easily. He mocks her confidence, but she bites back she was the top student in her battalion, not some quitter. When he asks why she left, she shuts him down. They aren't friends enough for personal talk. He drops it, letting her finish the job of escorting him home. Before vanishing, she teases that he isn't actually stronger than her. Then she gives him a cold and very formal goodbye. He just watches her go. Alone now, he remembers Ken's lead search for companies starting with the letter B in Tora's books. This is the trail to Noel, the fake name he thinks Kinyuan was using. Looking at the data, every single one of those companies is long dead. This database is garbage, filled with fake info to throw people off the scent. Now pay attention, because the only way out is through the Imperial system, and he is about to initiate what will be a very expensive phone call. The line clicks open, and a voice greets him, noting just how busy he has been lately. Nicholas suggests getting straight to the point. Luca asks for Imperial database access, and once denied, he proposes investigating a few of those closed companies instead. Nicholas asks if this helps his standing in the family. Luca confirms it. Done deal. Nicholas agrees to help and asks him for the list. He promises an answer in 2 hours, acting like a supportive brother. Luca hangs up, feeling nothing but pure disdain for that fake act. He can't worry about the cost. The mission is the only thing that matters. He thinks back on all the deals he has had to make lately. Negotiating with Alf, Ken, and Gabriel's gang all night long has truly left his head absolutely spinning. Okay. I think we've all been there, just wanting to sleep while the world keeps falling apart around us. He faceplants into the pillow, praying for just a few minutes of quiet. Hope dies fast. Nicholas sends a brand new message the work is not over yet. Reading the report, he wonders how many missions Ale did while he was gone. Ale has been volunteering for everything. No wonder Luca has not seen the guy around lately. He remembers Ale's vow to stop running away from the fight. He decides it's time to check in. Ale is currently free, resting up inside his own private maintenance and repair room. Before he can leave, A woman stops him and asks if he's already heard the latest news. She warns that Ale is going mission crazy and might lose his top ranking if he keeps this up. Luca does not blink. He just tells her, "We'll see." She teases him immediately. Is that confidence because he's officially a member of the Castor family now? She tells him to relax, but he knows they understand nothing. He flashes back to the old days, just following orders and pulling triggers without asking any questions. Now he's doing it all solo, trusting nobody, and fighting the constant urge to just give it all up. He misses the past, but this was his choice. If he fails now, he gets eliminated. Period. Survival means solving his own problems to finally reach the level of legends like Kinwan. Seeing his face, she apologizes for the judgment. She was just worried since he had been ghosting everyone lately. He reassures her. This power and prestige? It is everything he has ever wanted for himself. He notes that everything starts with small steps until the high nobles notice him. Plus, he admits he has not slept in 3 whole days. Being a noble is exhausting, but he is going to keep climbing to the top. As we leave him there, a new mystery awaits in that maintenance capsule. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's next. Alright, you and I are about to see a friendship that's deeper and deadlier than it looks. Luca looks at Ella's scarred hand. It's been through war. Lori Kartika has been making moves, but Ella says it's nothing compared to what Luca's been doing. Luca remembers the warning he could actually lose his first place spot. He realizes he might actually be weaker than Ella now. That wasn't a joke. It's officially time to start rethinking his own fighting style for the next stage. Ella stands up with a smirk, asking if being his friend comes with perks now that he's a wanted man. Luca just meets the teasing with a quiet, brotherly affection. Ella starts getting dressed, telling Luca to follow him. He's ready to show off everything he's gained so far. Now pay attention, because what's in this tank is about to change everything. A mechanical beast, suspended in silence, explains exactly why Ela is feeling so confident lately. This thing is from planet Novas, notoriously impossible to catch. Luca realizes his friend has truly evolved into a monster. But what does this creature have to do with the ancient arcane civilization? Ela admits nothing is confirmed yet, but the connection between them feels undeniable. Isle explains these beasts are made of metal, but they're alive, they can reproduce and evolve all on their own. Ella touches the glass, a mysterious smile playing on his lips. Luca remembers Isle's smile while wondering if these things can be tamed. Ayla's answer? There's no precedent, nobody has ever tried. Back on the balcony, Luca asks what the future holds for this beast. This might be the last time Luca sees it. It's being moved to the Royal Palace Research Department soon. Luca figures that's where the creature will stay forever. Ella just smirks at that. Suddenly, he pulls out a dagger, revealing another prize he managed to snag. It's a ceremonial commander's blade, carved from the bones of an extinct animal. Impossible to replicate. Luca wonders if a bone weapon can actually hold up in a real fight. Ella tells him to grip it tight. In a flash, he attacks and the bone blade blocks the strike perfectly. You saw that, right? Holding the weapon, Luca realizes it's truly unique as energy starts surging over the blade. Ela smiles, offering it as a gift to celebrate Luca becoming the heir to the Castoria family. The blade is called Always White. And trust him, this is no ordinary gift. Luca isn't sure if he's being teased, but Isle assures him he's being dead serious. Luca silently accepts the blade. Under the city lights, he vows to use it well. Later, he returns to his room with the weapon. He sits there, just staring at the gift he just received. In a universe doomed to fade away, our lives can feel like tiny fragments of nothing. Even so, things like prestige, life, and the bonds we share must continue until the bitter end. Luca admits he's getting a bit sentimental. But honestly, there's nothing else to be done. He realizes this is the first truly sincere gift he's ever received in his entire life. A moment later, Luca smiles. Nicholas really does know how to get the job done. If you enjoyed this, hit like and subscribe. You and I will see you next time.